This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. Legal?
Good morning. I'm Joe Sprivitz, General Counsel, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Water and Power Commissioners. With me in the DWP boardroom are General Manager and Chief Engineer Marty Adams, our CFO Anson Tilley, the Board Secretary, and very limited essential staff only. As permitted under Governor Newsom's executive order of March 17th, all of the Board of Water and Power Commissioners are teleconferencing from remote locations. Also consistent with the Governor's order, all public comment will be taken telephonically. We may announce a recess if we have technical difficulties or lose a quorum due to technical difficulties. As indicated on the agenda, members of the public wishing to offer public comment should call 213-306-3065 and use meeting ID number 962-891-530#. Let me repeat that number. That's 213-306-3065 and use meeting ID number 962-891-530#. There is a call moderator who will let you know when it is your turn to speak. You will be identified by your partial phone number. To members of the public calling in, when it is your turn to speak, please state whether you are speaking on general public comment or on a specific agenda item. You will have 2 minutes per item to speak, up to a total of 5 minutes. The board secretary will let you know when your time is up. Finally, and very importantly for members of the public who are calling in to speak, if you are also listening to the board meeting on your computer or on the speakerphone, please turn down the volume on those devices before you start speaking, as it will cause echo and feedbacks. Commissioners, at this time, the board secretary will do another roll call. This time when your name is called, in addition to stating your presence, please let the board secretary know if you would like any agenda items for approval pulled for questions or discussions. I now turn it over to the board secretary.
I will be doing roll call. Please say present. Barad? Commissioner Barad?
Present.
Levine?
Present.
McLean Hill?
Present.
Neiman Brady?
Present and item 18.
Reyes?
Present. Item 12, please.
5 members present and a quorum. President Levine, for opening remarks.
Thank you, Susie. So are the only items that are being requested to be pulled 12 and 18, or do any commissioners have other items they want to identify at this time?
Item 17 be pulled.
Okay, thanks, Jill. My opening remarks, I'll probably sound a little bit like a broken record because I've made essentially the same opening remarks at each of our other 2 remote meetings, and they're these. First, I'm continue to be extremely impressed and grateful for the fabulous work that our entire workforce is doing under the most challenging of circumstances, which we're all keenly aware of. The performance of the DWP workforce in keeping the water running and keeping the power on and basically keeping the city and the city family secure with regard to the most essential needs that we have, water and power, is extraordinary. Our entire workforce deserves an incredible vote of thanks. And I know that I'm speaking for all of my colleagues when I say this, but I just want to underscore it. Secondly, as I've said at least last time, and I think the time before, Marty, you're doing a fabulous job. I I sent you a private email saying this is what leadership looks like. And I want to say that publicly. Your continuous messages to the entire DWP world have been important, have been substantive, and at the same time succinct and clear. And again, I know that my colleagues will all agree with my deep gratitude to you and compliments on your leadership. And finally, as I said at the last meeting, which was right on the heels of Mayor Garcetti's State of the City message, we are so lucky in Los Angeles to have Eric Garcetti as our mayor at a time like this. It's a time when we need substance, knowledge, thoughtfulness, and real leadership. Would we only have something resembling this at the federal level, which we don't, but thank goodness we have it at the city level. And so I want to compliment the staff. I want to compliment Marty. I want to compliment the mayor for doing everything that one could possibly expect and more in the most trying circumstances. With that, Susie, let's do general public comment.
Thank you. Steve?
All right. Good morning. We have 5 callers, and I'm going to go ahead and start. So I have call-in user number 2. Your area code is, I'm going to list out your area code and your prefix, and then I will unmute your line. Please state your name and whether you have a general public comment or a specific item, and you'll have up to 5 minutes for your comments.
Actually, isn't it 2 minutes?
If it's 2, yes.
2 minutes.
You heard originally 5 a minute ago, but yes.
No, you heard 5 if there are cumulative statements, but for each statement, it's 2.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. So calling number user number 2, your area code is 213842. I'm unmuting your line. Please state your name and which item you're speaking on. Calling user number 2. Okay, I'm going to mute. I'll come back to you at the end. Calling user number 7, your area code is 626 with a prefix 926. Your line is now unmuted. Please state your name and your public comment item. Good morning. Okay, we'll go on to the next caller. Call-in user number 7, area code 626-926. Okay. Next caller is area code 714, prefix 747. Your line is now unmuted. Please state your name and your item. Call-in user number 8. Okay. Calling user number 10, area code 213, prefix 792. Your line is now unmuted. Please state your name and your item to comment on. Calling user number 10. Okay. Next caller, area code 213, prefix 367. Your line is now unmuted. Please state your name and your item.
That's a DWP line. I don't think that's right.
Okay.
You think what?
All right. And we have area code 805, prefix 233. Your line's now unmuted. Can you please state your name and your item number? Good morning, call-in user. Okay. And try again. Area code 213, prefix 842. Your line's now unmuted. Please state your name and your item. Hello, call-in user. Okay. Area code 626-926. Your line is now unmuted. Good morning. Okay, area code 714, precinct 747. Your line is now unmuted. Please state your name. Area code 213, prefix 792. Please state your name and your item.
They are on the line, though.
Okay. All right. And lastly, area code 213-367. Your line is unmuted. Okay, Madam Secretary, we've gone through all of the call-in users twice, and we have no public comment.
Steve, I do want to confirm that all those lines are working, correct?
I believe I've done all in mute on all of those. All lines are unmuted. They should be active.
Thank you.
Just double checking, Carl, you can hear me on that line, correct?
Good morning. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification, Steve. The public comment is
You
now
got it.
closed.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Susie. General Manager?
Good morning, Commissioners. It's good to, is it called EC or virtually see everyone again? I miss everybody. Mel, thank you very much for your kind words. I appreciate it. And I totally agree that the staff here is doing a fantastic job, and both the ones here in the office, the ones that are working from home, certainly our field forces, everyone is really stepping up and keeping both the company and the city running. So we're very, very happy with what's going on and very proud of everyone and the efforts they're making. I wanted to mention just a few things, and then we have another briefing just on COVID. I'll talk about exactly what we're doing in terms of directly responding to the pandemic. But I did want to talk about the systems are running well. Everything in both water and power is going very well. We are continuing to hook up new services, do all the critical work that we need to do. And so even with a slightly reduced field presence, we have extended working hours. The city has given us additional hours to work in the street. So our crews are proving to be much more effective at getting projects done because they have more available working hours and less, compared to downtime with traveling and setting up and tearing down. And so we're getting our work done in a very good, safe fashion. There have been a few instances where we've had to remind crews to make sure they're masking up. We do have the masks that I showed you last meeting that allow our crews to work safely even in an electrical hazard condition. But by and large, we're doing our best to distance as much as physically possible when they're doing construction work, but also making sure that employees are staying with a single crew, and also that they're have the most protective gear they can and be able to still do their jobs. One of the things we're seeing is, as we expected, we're seeing a reduction in sales right now in water and power use. Water's a little hard to discern right now because it's so much driven by the weather. Power use is down. Last week, I think that we're down about 11% in usage overall. It's pretty consistent with what we're seeing throughout the industry. I think, I don't know if I reported it was the last meeting, but a couple weeks ago we were down almost getting close to 20%. And so, but typically we've been in the low teens to 15% below average for use. The reason I bring this up is that this plays a lot into what we're looking at in terms of impact financially for the future, and also with our budgeting. As we go through the budget today, there's a lot of pieces that I want to make sure that today we're looking at budget and trying to answer some of the questions and looking at where we've revised our budget downward. But within the context, the budget drives a need to collect a certain amount of revenue. And then, of course, through our financial statements, that revenue is determined by how much is paid out of pocket and how much is paid through bonding. And so, so the amount of revenue we need to collect is not directly related to the budget. It's a version of the budget influenced a lot by our level of bonding that we do in borrowing. And so, but then that all hinges, the impact of the customer hinges greatly on how much we sell. And so as we're seeing, the continued growth in our conservation programs, particularly in power conservation, which is really starting to have an effect on the amount of power usage, plus the effects from the COVID virus, you see that the amount of revenue that has to be collected to support the work is spread over fewer units. So overall, we're seeing that we'll need to collect less total cash from our customers, but the unit price will have to go up as sales go down. And that's actually by plan, and that's how conservation works. We're paying people and investing hundreds of millions of dollars to use less of our resource, but then the cost that it takes to run the system and to plan for the future doesn't change, and so we have to spread it out differently. So we are seeing some impacts.
Marty?
Yes.
Hi, it's Nicole. I just, when you mentioned that the overall is down 11%, had some clarifying questions there. Is that just for the month now of April completed, or the past week? And also, how much has residential gone up for that corresponding period? Because while bills probably, I assume, are actually already going up, because people are consuming.
Right. So that's a great question, and we don't have all the data yet because realizing that we're only reading residential meters every 2 months. So most customers will receive one, maybe some will be receiving their second bill. So we don't have a lot. We have a data trend on usage overall, not a real good breakdown yet of what residential looks like. When we're analyzing the data, so last week was about 11% off. It's been about 15% for April overall. And what we're doing is that the folks in Reiko's group are actually analyzing every day versus what that day should have been. So it's not a sales versus a long-term projection. It's actually a day-to-day comparison, looking at what the weather pattern was and everything else. So they're doing an exact as possible projection of what they thought we would normally sell under those conditions versus what we did. And so certainly you're right. So we're seeing people have an uptick in usage at home. When we had the hot weather a couple weeks ago, sales, the gap really narrowed, which really tells us that people's air conditioning at home is running really hard because they're making up for all the industrial and business use that's not occurring. And so, but we don't have enough data yet to look at the difference. We will, I hope, soon. But in the smart meter world, we can tell you right now, but we don't have that available to us. But there will be an uptick in residential usage, but the overall usage, of course, is, like I say, 11 to 15% or so down on power. Water, we're still waiting to see, because the weather is really driving more of the water trend than we see with customers at this point. And so, but that'll definitely affect bills that people get at home. And so we are, continue to work on programs for our customers to be able to pay, and to make sure that they don't get behind on their payments as well. And so anyway, I bring this up just as a precursor to the budget discussion, that we're keeping close eye on revenue, close eye on sales and usage. And there's the other thing is there's a lot of messaging about we're not shutting people off, and that we're actually going to continue that way through the rest of the calendar year. And then also in terms of if people can't pay, we're not forgiving bills, but we're not taking collection action at this time. But we are working very hard on payment plans and things that can help people get through, because what we don't want to have is people get back on their feet, and then at the end of the year they have a balloon payment due because they haven't been making payments at all. And so we're hopefully we'll see some improvement in the economy in the next month or so. It's not going to help what happened the last 2 months, but ideally people will not be suffering through more than one or two bills. And so unlike the billing problem we have with the billing system, where we had 12 months or more of people who had inaccurate bills or didn't pay. In this case, hopefully, this is down to 1 or 2 bills for most of our customers. So I just want to let you know we're keeping an eye on that and on the sales, and certainly there are definitely higher residential usages going on right now, and but hopefully by next meeting or right after that, we'll have a good breakdown for you on how that looks. I don't have any other report other than just what we're doing with COVID. I'll report that later on. And other than that, but business is continuing. Our customers to the services, customer service is going well. We're managing all of our functions and still getting things done for construction, and new business and new construction that's coming on. And I will say that there is not a slowdown in requests for water and power services. The construction is continuing to roll at a pretty good pace in the city.
Does anyone else hear that music?
No.
Did someone place their call on hold?
I did.
Oh, it could be hold music on someone's phone.
No, Marty's just very melodic when he speaks.
I was sing-song style, so.
This is Brad. I don't hear the music. Is the music issue resolved on it? Is anybody else hearing music?
Yeah, so, okay, so that's the last of my report. I will ask real quickly if, Rich, do you have anything that you'd like to add to your status, or go ahead if you have anything?
Sure. Yeah. Commissioner Neiman Brady, most of our sales is residential. I think 70+% of that.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I'm going to log off. I don't know where this music is coming from, but I'm going to log off if no one else is hearing the music, and I'll log back in with the hopes that I can hear it now.
We only hear it when you speak. And
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So most of our sales is through residential. So we obviously are seeing a trend from commercial sales to residential, but since commercial and industrial does not represent the majority of it, we don't plan to see a lot of that. And then within residential, the smaller portion, but still a significant portion, is through water sales and multifamily, which we generally do not bill directly to. So we won't be able to see that directly on a per unit basis, per dwelling unit basis.
Commissioner Neiman Brady, are you able to hear us now?
Yes, you just came back on, so why doesn't Richard just repeat that?
I'm still getting that music. I'll try a different headset.
We can hear it when you're speaking, but that's the only time we can hear it. That's weird.
That is very weird. All right. Did that work?
yes,
There's
now we
no
don't
music.
hear it.
Okay.
Go
Excellent.
ahead, Rich.
Sorry about that, everyone.
Yeah, Commissioner Neiman Brady, I was just saying, in reference to our sales, so most of our sales are residential already, and though we are seeing obviously sales transition from a lack of commercial industrial use to the residential sector, since so much is already in residential, our sales will probably remain there just in terms of usage. Now, collections will be a different issue. So that would be the only finer point I would put on the general manager's comments.
Andy, anything you'd like to add?
No, Marty, I think you did a good job explaining it. Like I said, the crews are working hard. They're working together, and everybody's, for the most part, we've had a few incidents of people where we've had to correct them on staying safe and staying apart. But overall, everything's going well.
Thanks. Rico, anything to add to that?
The one thing I would add is with the load down, our renewable portfolio standard percentages are up. And it's really interesting, the morning report that comes out on Sunday, we had 1 hour ending 13, that was 87% renewables. So I guess that might be a silver lining, but typically we see mid 30s, sometimes a little higher 30s, which is very encouraging. And we've also had reduced gas usage.
So, yes, and so that's one thing with renewables, because they're on when they're on. So if we're using less power, they're a bigger proportion of the mix. So that's good. So that's the end of my report, unless there's any questions for me. And I'll talk more about what we're doing with regard to COVID a little later on.
Okay, comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Levine, do you want to take item number 4? Commissioner Levine, can you please unmute?
You hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I already commented, Susie, I was thinking you should call on each of the other commissioners.
Correct. Commissioner Barad, comments? Can you unmute, please?
There you go.
Commissioner Barad, comments?
She just muted herself again.
Yeah.
Please unmute. Now we can hear you. Go ahead, please. Comments, Commissioner Barad?
I have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Susana Reyes?
I just have one. I just want to thank Marty and all who made telecommuting possible, a reality here at CWP. This pandemic forced the department to allow a number of its employees to work from home, and telecommuting has evolved as really a cornerstone for continuity of our operations and emergency preparedness. So as the city works on plans to bring more people back to the work sites, we still do expect some telecommuting to continue. So I would like to request the department to review the telecommuting programs currently in place, analyze those best practices, look at establishing an official telecommuting policy, one that can be utilized during normal business and one that can be activated during disasters. Because I don't think we have an official telecommuting policy. I think now is the time to do that so that we can provide guidance and consultation to the divisions on a range of telecommuting potentials in consultation with our labor partners. So if you could please establish that policy and share that official policy with the board, stay within 60 days, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Commissioner McLean-Hill?
I would just like to reinforce and to associate myself with the comments made by the chair at the opening of the meeting, and also Commissioner Reyes with respect to telecommuting policy. I think it's critically important that we look at how we can utilize this tool moving forward, both on a non-emergent and emergent basis.
Thank you. Commissioner Neiman Brady?
Nothing to add at this time. Thank you.
Ratepayer advocate?
I will have some brief comments on the budget presentation. And there was a question asked by Commissioner Neiman Brady about rates adjusting. The decoupling mechanism is reset annually. It's reviewed in about October 1 and put into place for the water and power rates on January 1. So the rates have not adjusted up yet for the reduced sales. We will not see that in rates until January 1.
Susie, discussion with neighborhood council representatives?
No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
Okay, I heard at the beginning requests to pull items 12, 17, and 18.
17?
Commissioner Levine, can I confirm item 19 being pulled by Commissioner Barad? Jill, do you still want item 19 pulled?
I have item 17 by Jill.
I have 17 by Brard.
And 12 and 18, right?
Correct. This was pulled yesterday for discussion. Do you want to pull that item, Commissioner Barad?
You're on mute.
You're
Commissioner
on
Brard.
mute. Please unmute.
You were still muted, Commissioner Brard.
Commissioner Barad, can you please unmute?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I had requested 17 and 19.
And 19. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so the items to be pulled will be 12, 17, 18, and 19.
Correct.
That leaves to be voted on at this time under consent 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 20.
I move approval.
What?
15?
I said I move approval.
Did you say 15?
Oh, good.
Yes.
Second. Those in favor?
Second?
Oh,
I second.
Susie, go ahead and call the roll on the consent calendar.
Levine,
Aye.
McLean Hill,
Aye.
Jill Barad,
Aye.
Susanna Reyes,
Aye.
Neiman Brady,
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, thank you. We will move to management reports. Marty, COVID-19.
Okay, so I will give you a quick summary where we're at and then tell you where we're heading. So right now we are continuing with we're actually kind of in a steady state, have not had a lot of changes to what we're doing here at work. We have close to 3,000 people that are telecommuting, and we are also rotating field crews. We're doing that so that we ensure that we have everyone available at all times for emergency or repair work, but at the same time making sure that we keep our crews healthy because there is a lot of work demand going on of our crews, and we need to make sure that we had a way to not overpopulate our yards and workspaces, as well as be very measured in how we're out in the community doing work amongst the public. So that's been continuing for, I think, probably 3 weeks now, and been in that situation. We currently have had 13 cases, positive coronavirus cases in our employees that we're aware of. No one has contracted the virus at the workplace. People have gotten it from family members or stores or elsewhere, but our efforts to keep the workplace safe and clean have been very effective. Our custodial crew has still continue doing an outstanding job of disinfecting and keeping this building and other buildings immaculate, essentially. And we have social distancing policies, such as no more than 2 people in an elevator and the typical 6 feet apart. Everyone on department property or performing work for the department is required to wear a mask unless you're in the privacy of your own car or if you're in your own office by yourself. And so, so those things are working. And so we have had people get sick. We've had people that we thought maybe have been exposed to those folks be put on kind of a quarantine leave. But no one has contracted it from another employee at work. So we're very happy about that. We want to keep it that way and keep our track record clean that way. Also want to let you know that as we work through this, we've had very close working relationship with our labor partners. Certainly, IBEW has been very closely involved represents 96% of our staff, roughly 96% of our staff, and working very closely, very well with us. We're also engaged with the Management Employees Association, and because the managers are the ones they represent are running crews and running folks throughout the department and keeping tabs on all the work that's going on. And so we've had a great cooperation and can look forward to continued strong relationship as we work through this together. I think everyone realizes that we're in this together, and so it's been a very beneficial relationship and good working so far. We expect that not to have any reason to change. So I'd like to let you know about what we're planning to do.
Hello.
Commissioner Bard, can you go on mute, please?
There we go. She's muted. Okay. So the plan, matter of fact, we did have one online comment asking about that the board received. It was referring to about people coming back to work and what our plans are. So as we're looking at as we're looking at the whole of society trying to get back on its feet, we have to look at what our role is in that. My belief is that we know the construction has been going very strong throughout the pandemic. My view is that we play a very important role both in the city and the city economy in terms of supporting construction, supporting jobs, and certainly getting everyone back on their feet. We are a big player. You realize that our budget that you'll be seeing again today is larger than the city general fund. And so we're a major influence. And so in looking at how things are moving forward, my intention is next week to have all the management employees return to work full time. There's only 450 management employees, period. Probably half of us are here all the time anyway already, but we're going to return the rest of the folks because we have to be preparing for our next phase. And in response to Commissioner Reyes' comments, we realize that telecommuting as a long-term policy is something that we'll have to look at, and I know it's been brought up before. There are some issues that we'll have to get through on that, but telecommuting for the near term is going to continue for a while. I'm expecting that we'll be telecommuting throughout the summer, and I'm not sure how long after that. In the workspace here, we've done a lot of evaluating. Most people can work safely in their office, but we're not sure we can get them safely to and from their office. And so between social distancing in the elevators, checking employees coming into the building, we're going to not have people van pool, so people will be either carpooling on their own or driving independently and having adequate parking. We're looking at how much capacity we can get back to in this building and still continue to have a good track record for safety. And so our initial plan is to bring all the managers back in so that they can continue to work on developing what the plan will be for the rest of the staff. I'm hoping that within the next month or so that every employee will spend at least one day a week at the office and rotate. Ideally, I'd like to get this building back to about roughly 20% capacity. And so that'll give us a lot more communication with employees. When we had initiated our telecommuting at the beginning of this, we had very little time to really lay it out and get organized. We've had folks get a lot of work done, but at the same time, it's been a challenge. And so looking at this is going to be a kind of a long-term future for at least a number of months. I need to make sure that we have good communication and touch points with our employees, that they're able to come in and gather work and drop off work, that projects are moving forward. It's not lost on me in any way, shape, or form that the public is going to be expecting us to do everything we can beneficial with the money that they send us on their bills. And so I need to make sure that we're performing at 100% across the board in all offices. And so we'll be bringing back folks to help us basically retool how we telecommute and how we're working with employees and a little more plans and policies in place to make sure that everything that we need to get done is getting done in the most efficient manner we can, while at the same time not bringing back so many people that we would risk having people get infected or being too close together at the building. So that plan is being finalized now. So the first step would be to bring back a management team, and then the next step would be to bring back the highest level supervisors, which would be in IBEW, and basically that core of people will then schedule and lay out when other employees would come to work. We'll have employees assigned different days of the week, with employees assigned maybe different reporting times, because if it doesn't help us if we have a lot of people show up at once, we need to screen people coming into the building. We need to make sure that people are staggered using the elevator banks. And so even keeping people separate in the elevator doesn't help if you're going to have them crowd in the elevator lobby. So there's a lot of logistical issues to do this correctly. But we need to really retool to make sure that we're set for how we need to be for the entire summer in terms of optimizing the work that we get done, maximizing what we get out of our folks while they're both here and back at home. During the course of this, we will be staging back to get full capacity in the field. That'll be a challenge because we have already crews segregated so they don't mix with each other as much as possible, but dedicating equipment to certain crews so that they're not just going into a vehicle that maybe 10 different people have used in the last 2 weeks. Looking at where they're staging, because we don't want to have them all in the yards at the same time. So there'd be both challenges in the field and challenges in the office. But in the next couple weeks, I expect that we'll have a larger team here working on laying out how we're going to address all those. Hopefully, I think the plan is in about 3 weeks that we would start to bring people back more often, realizing that the plan in the very beginning was always that employees would come in and check in and spend some time here during the course of their telecommute. As the epidemic got worse, we emphasized staying home more than checking in, but there's been nothing. And the whole reason for that was because we want to make sure that the folks who had to be here, such as Sharon Grove's call center folks who've had to be here, she has about 300 customer service folks that are here every day, and other people who are here, we want to make sure that this workplace was safe for them. So now we realize that we've been very successful at managing that and keeping this building safe. And so we're basically kind of returning back to the original plan for telecommuting, but also creating a much more structured approach to it across all the offices. And so that's kind of where we're at in a very small nutshell. There's a lot of documents. Linda Lee's been the Mad Hatter writing behind everything. And so we have, I think, 5 or 6 new policies. We've got revised policies on if someone feels sick, go to immediate testing.
Marty,
yes,
Marty,
so go ahead.
You're talking a lot. So
I'm sorry.
Having difficulty following you. Can I just ask that?
Go right ahead.
Just because I don't want to lose it. What's the current capacity of our? Did you say that you're trying to return to 20% capacity? What is the current capacity in terms of people coming in right now?
So right now, we're actually firming up the numbers. We're doing a kind of another check. My belief right now is there's probably 600 to 700 people in the building a day, and I think the building has 3,000 something occupants currently, and so that it may vary day to day. There's probably at least 500 here on any given day, and so it's not a huge increase. Roughly 55% maybe of the managing personnel have offices here, and the others have offices out in districts, because your district superintendents, assistant superintendents, and others are all management personnel. So we expect that just bringing management personnel back to the building will add maybe 100 people. And so, and of course, there'll still be people who have medical reasons in all classifications, where they have pre-existing conditions or the 65 or older, who will have the option to continue to telecommute, because that's the official recommendation. There are some folks who will have major child care issues that will work to work with, and so there'll be some folks that will need to remain home for those issues. So, and in those cases, some people's work may change so that we can have meaningful work for everyone. Whether if your typical job doesn't accommodate that, we have plenty of other work for folks to do. So, but somewhere, I don't know if I answered your question or not, but somewhere, probably minimum of 500, probably more like 600 or 700. And we were going to do a current count yesterday, but a lot of folks have Monday as dues. So we're doing a count now to see exactly how many people in this building. But it's not a huge increase, but it's going to be much more regimented.
And I assume that your goal is to optimize departmental operations and efficiencies as opposed to simply bringing as many people back into an office setting as possible.
That's absolutely correct.
Because those are two different objectives.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, that is the goal. The goal is to I know that we're going to be telecommuting for quite some time. So we're at the point now we need to kind of retool and really look. This is not a stopgap measure. We know that in the beginning it was an issue of employee health and safety as well as keeping our critical operations going. And so now looking that this is going to be going on through the summertime, office buildings I think will be the last things that reoccupy. So we're coming up with a plan by which we can more effectively manage all of our staff and make sure that we're getting all the work done that we need to get done and that nothing's falling through the cracks.
Okay, great. Thank you. I was just trying to make sure that I was clear about the overriding objective. I would simply observe that, downtown continues to be a, sort of just ghost town in terms of office buildings. Everything's locked up practically down here. And in the private sector, especially in my industry, and I know in many others, this is not only our people, to Commissioner Reyes' point, really leaning into telecommuting as a business practice, but they're actually thinking about their overall real estate management strategies moving into the future through a lens of how much can be accomplished without congregating people in office buildings. Realizing that the wave of the future is going to be more, not less telecommuting, and that folks 45 and under already live in that space, and certainly our newer workforce is very comfortable in that space. So I do believe that this is an opportunity for us to both, first and foremost, keep people safe. To your point, figuring out how to optimize efficiency in this new paradigm is important, but moving forward and thinking about how we leverage technology in the future and what that gives us the opportunity to do in terms of how we manage our human resources, I think is important as well.
Yeah, and it's very good points. I will tell you that there's a lot of simple challenges in terms of like bandwidth for connecting electronically, and in terms of being able to get in through VPN so that we have secure pathways for people to get into the system here. Use of personal computing equipment at home. Some companies that allow telecommuting provide an allowance for high-speed internet and things like that. So there's a lot of when this started, we took kind of broad sweeps across the organization, but employees have different levels of electronic capability at home, and so to do this long term, we need to make sure that there's some standard, some minimum standard, some level of connectivity, some expectation. Our employees using their own devices, they're using our devices, how secure are those devices. So there's a lot involved to do it long term, and even short term. Lewis Carr's had to make dramatic and quick increases in capacity that because we've never needed this before. We have about 100 call center reps that are taking calls remotely as a pilot, and a lot of call centers are remote. This is something very different for us, and so but even like Edison has call centers that are remote, but they have a whole series of metrics to know that their call center reps are doing a certain level of work from home. So this is it's a whole new world, and much that would have to be developed, and we don't have it yet. But at the same time, if we're going to be doing this throughout the summer, I need to make sure that we have a really firm handle on everything that's happening. LA County has communication protocol requirements. They actually, have for the management team and supervisors. They actually have stated out what the communication policies are for communicating with employees and frequency and that sort of thing. So right now we're a little more hit and miss, and people are responding differently based on probably how accessible their workforce is for electronics and the kind of work they do. And I need to make that more uniform.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you.
Bill, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Marty?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Last time you mentioned about shifts, that you were looking at making some changes regarding when people come in and when they leave. I wanted to have a follow-up on that, and then also the elevator situation. Last time I was in the building, the elevator was just completely full. You couldn't get another person into the elevator. We were all standing there like, upright sardines, and that concerns me, the elevator situation, and also all the people pushing the buttons to try to get an elevator. So what are we doing about that situation?
So I totally agree. Matter of fact, when this started, I had one day the elevator doors open and it looked like everyone's jam-packed. At the very beginning of this, we went to a 6-person max in the elevators. That lasted about a half a week. We went to a 3-person max in the elevators. We now have a 2-person maximum in the elevators, and so which allows people to be far enough apart from each other. I will tell you right now that about once or twice a week, there's another person in the elevator with me, and so we are doing that. Social distancing is important there. Elevators are being cleaned regularly, although the number of people touching buttons, and so what people typically do here is they don't touch doorknobs or elevator buttons with their hands, and so my elbows have become very good at aiming for my floors that I need to go to, but typically we're pushing buttons and turning doorknobs with things other than hands, and there is a lot of hand sanitizer around as well. So, and that's one of the things that concerns me in terms of people in the office. You can't bring everybody back at once and have them sit and wait, an hour to get to their office. So this is part of the things that has to be figured out and managed very carefully, and that'll probably require some staging of start times, so we don't have a lot of people queuing to try to get to work. But at the same time, I need people to be able to get to their desk, get to their workstations, bring work in, take work out. And so that's what I plan on starting that to really kind of re-engineer that next week with the management team.
Are we going to have signs near the elevators? I'm thinking on the B level, saying that only a certain number of people are going to be.
There have been signs in the elevators for the last 2 months. And there's posted at the elevators. There's now actually new signs posted in the hallways and the stairwells. The signage is everywhere. When we start bringing any number of people back, even Monday, with managers who may not have been here very long, we'll have security officers at the driveway gates making sure that everyone has a health checklist and has a mask for when they get out of their car. So we'll have that already on Monday. Most things, I think people are familiar with most of the protocols here, but we're making sure that if anyone was missed or didn't get all the latest word, that's going to be clear to everybody. But yeah, there's a lot of signage. There's signage at all of our yards, and there's also at critical facilities, our LOSDAT control room here, filter plant control room, power plants, ECC. We also have check-in signage before people enter, as well as in those cases we actually have thermometers for critical staff to make sure they don't bring an infection into a control room setting where that could affect our operations. So there's a lot of steps have been taken, and I think generally people are recognizing, they're adhering to them very well. And like I say, it's even in the building, people are very few and far between right now.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
Does anybody else have any questions? There's a there's a boatload of details to go with all this. I won't drag you through all that, but if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Linda Lee, am I forgetting anything that the board needs to know?
The only thing that I would add to what Marty said already is he said he didn't emphasize that masks are required everywhere throughout the building unless you're at your personal desk space. So we've been making sure everybody walks in the building gets a mask as soon as they get here. And then the other thing I wanted to add on is that our staff have been very creative in trying to figure out how to deal with desk space. They've even manufactured their own cubicle wall so that everybody has at least a plexiglass barrier between every desk so that there's not somebody sitting next to you without a barrier. We're figuring out van pools and parking situations so that when everybody does come in, they're able to park and they're not required to come into a van pool and sit in a van in a confined space for an hour as they come and work.
Yeah. Thanks, Linda.
That's all I had to add.
Thank you.
So
are we prepared to move to the budget?
I guess a question, would you like to do that first, or would you like to take the other items, because the budget presentation is potentially long depending on how much detail you'd all like to see. Not necessarily, I see my staff laughing at me, thank you. So not necessarily long because of the numbers, but long because we tried to add some context around the work that's getting done and how this budget falls within the greater scheme of things. So I don't know if you'd like to do that.
Well, I like your idea to go ahead with the agenda and then do the budget. So if there's no objection, I'll move to item 10, and then we'll go to the 4 pulled items. Susie, would you call the roll? Or I move approval of the minutes of the special board meeting of April 21st. Susie, would you? Is there a second? Anybody second the motion? Oh, thank you.
Second.
Susie?
Brad?
Aye.
Reyes?
Aye.
Neiman Brady?
Aye.
McLean Hill?
Aye.
Levine?
Aye. Thank you.
5 ayes.
The first item that was pulled is item 12, Commissioner Reyes. Commissioner Reyes, do you want a presentation or do you have questions?
I just have 2 questions. One is a clarifying question. I just want to know what steps CWP is taking to ensure increases in our operating costs do not result in downgrades by the bond rating agencies when they consider our operational risk assessment. So that's one question. And the other one is a clarifying question on the refunding. If you can tell me more about the timing of for the refunding. Are there more than 90 days left or fewer left in the original bond terms, or more than 90 days, or both?
I have Peter Wynn that's going to be coming up to help with the bond presentation. But as far as our operating costs, we work with the rating agencies and we look to understand how they look at the department, what risks they see for us. So as our operating costs rise, which when you look at the budget presentation, we've actually been able to reduce them. The offset is to reduce costs and then also recover more through rates. So right now, we are meeting with the rating agencies as we do our bond sales. They're actually more concerned in our leverage, how much debt we have on our books and how much, how are we able to recover that? And so we're going through our financial metrics right now, but as we go through the budget presentation, we have a very robust rate structure, both on water and power. Both this board and the city council was very proactive during the last rate changes, and they gave us the ability to fully recover all of our base rate revenue, to have uncapped pass-throughs, and to really respond to any type of situation that water or power may encounter as far as increased sales or reduced sales. So I think they understand that. They do look at our pension obligation, although we're over 90% funded on our pension obligation. We have a 7% assumed rate of return on our investments. They have different ways of looking at that liability and putting a little bit more risk on that, saying that maybe you'll earn more like 3% or 6%. And so that goes into the way they look at the department. So we're working with them on those activities, but it's really using our rate structure the way that this board and city council put it into place to get everybody comfortable on. We'll be fully able to meet all of our debt coverage. And then as far as the days on the current bonds, the 90 days, did you hear the question, Peter?
Yes. This is Peter Nguyen from FSO. Regarding the refunding, we're going to be refunding the 2010 Series A. That's the Build America bonds that was issued in 2010. The refunding is going to be a current refunding. We're going to have it close on July 1st. And the savings expected for that is going to be about $68.98 million over 21 years, or about $3.3 million per year in debt service savings.
Thank you. And just one more question: is the COVID situation part of the discussion with the agencies that you mentioned?
Absolutely. They're looking at how our sales are reducing, how we're responding to that. They've asked us how many of our employees have been sickened with it. We're also looking at accounts receivable, increasing that. Our rates do allow for that as part of our rate structure. Bad debt expense is recoverable through our pass-through rates. So we've continued to remind the rating agencies all of the things that we have in our rate structure that allow us to respond to changes. But they continue to look at that as a risk to the department and the utility industry as a whole.
Okay, thank you for the information.
Sure.
Are there other questions or comments on item 12? Is there a motion to approve item 12?
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Second. Susie, please call the roll.
Barad.
Aye.
McLean Hill.
Aye.
Neiman Brady.
Aye.
Reyes.
Aye.
Levine.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 17, memorandum of agreement, operations and maintenance of the Caballero Creek Wetlands Park. Commissioner Barad, do you have specific questions, or would you like a presentation?
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to know what the thinking was, that this is a multi-benefit natural park. What are we thinking about making this? How has this become a multi-benefit park? And then also, I'd like to know, this is in Tarzana, has there been communication with the community, the neighborhood council, and also the homeowners there? What is their feeling about turning this into a park?
Okay, this is Rich Harisick, be providing the answers. And Steve Ball or Reggie, I believe you have a graphic of the park itself, if you can put it up there. But in terms of the multi-uses, it means that there'll be passive recreation there. There'll be a river overlook. There'll be foot crossings and footpaths. There is a boardwalk there, a wetland there, a bioswale. So that's what that terminology means. And from the outset, I should say, this is obviously, we're not in the parks business, and our only portion of this is providing water to the project. It's actually a Mountains Conservancy project, and they have an agreement with Rec and Parks and LA Sanitation to manage that park. So in lieu of giving them a potable water service, we're allowing them to take water out of the Los Angeles River and use it for irrigation and the wetlands at the park. So that's our only angle here. Everything else is a project that is being promoted and sponsored by the Mountains Conservancy. It is in CD3, and we just, know that they have reached out to CD3 and the communities there. But we're not active in the development of the project itself.
Is there any thought to planting trees or shrubs in that area with the water?
Yeah, if I believe we have a picture there of the conceptual drawing. If Reggie can put that up, and you will see that there is a number of trees. There's a wetland actually built in there, and I don't have
Steve's
the
shaking his
details.
head no, so he doesn't have a.
That was not provided to us.
Okay. Well, in any event, yes, there are trees.
Rich, do you know if there's anything online that the commissioner might be able to look at from Conservancy about the park? As if there's any idea about that? If they have a website or something?
Yes, and we will provide that to her, and we can email her the details that we have of the look and feel of the park.
Yeah, okay, because I don't see any pictures here.
Yeah, we didn't have one for today, so.
Okay. And what's been your experience with dealing with the community on this? Are they're receptive?
Again, we're not the project proponent on this. It's the Mountains Conservancy whose project this is. This is just an agreement to provide them water.
Under the terms, you might see the under the terms. So basically, as Rich was noting, we as in you, the board, are the keepers of the water rights for the city of LA. So your action would be to allow those water rights to be used for this project. But everything else, including financial obligations and everything, is all on the other parties.
Is there a vote on this item? Or motion?
Can I ask one other question? Is this, just because I don't know exactly where this area is there any potential recharge value of that? Or is it really just irrigation and there's no real benefit to the aquifer underneath that you're currently remediating?
There is a direct recharge component. It's small. The total use on the park and the wetlands is 1.41 acres, so it would just be a percentage of that.
Okay. That's a nice benefit.
Is there a motion to approve this item? I move approval. Is there a second?
I second. Nicole.
Susie, please call the roll.
Berard.
Aye.
McLean Hill.
Aye.
Neiman Brady.
Aye.
Reyes.
Aye.
Levine.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, we move to item 18, Commissioner Neiman Brady, agreement number 47578 with Yellow Jacket Drilling Services, LLC for the groundwater monitoring and production wells installation project. Commissioner Neiman Brady, do you have questions or do you want a presentation?
I have some questions. They're bifurcated between really the procurement process and the actual what's being done. So the first set of questions is really this solicitation for services was was launched in 2017. A long time ago. Looks like lots of downloads of the opportunity, then only 2 bids. And there are lots of drilling entities out there. And so, and then one was disqualified. So I'm wondering what lessons can be learned. Was the scope of it too big, that's my suspicion. And why didn't others that are capable, like Greg Drilling, participate? Was it a function of the time? In 2017, perhaps most drilling entities were otherwise engaged. I'm just perplexed a little bit by this one. The second piece of it is the scope of this is quite large, and it encompasses a lot of things that I know LADWP is capable of doing themselves. So I'm just curious what the rationale of outsourcing all of this is.
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. So the first part is generally, and certainly in the time frame that when this was all started in 2016, 2017 time frame, there obviously are more than 2 drilling companies in the state of California, but just experience with this contract and other contracts, they're pretty busy all over the state at that time dealing with the drought, and certainly in the Central Valley, you know, every farmer and their brother was drilling for more water. So I'm going to guess that this is just a remnant of the times when we initially went out. There were issues with the contract, so I know we were negotiating on price, and so that took a while just to get them down there. As to the scope, it is a $45 million contract, but not all $45 million of that has been accounted for yet. There are quite a number of either monitoring wells or production wells that are a part of this. We do not, the department does not have the capability to drill wells. We pull pumps and motors and do some of those maintenance activities, but the actual drilling and placement of the casing is something we do by contract. The dollar-wise, it's interesting. I think it's upwards of a third of the cost is actually just for the materials, the stainless steel casing that goes in there, and then the rest is just really specialized work. You have to have special licensing to drill wells in the state of California, so that's why we don't do it in-house. But we do not have all $45 million spoken for at this date. So we have the ability over the next 3 years, as projects and programs come up, we'll be able to draw on that contract.
And does the presentation you have go into the location of where the monitoring and production wells will be located in their depth?
The presentation I have for you has some general areas on the last slide, probably not to the level of detail you're wanting, but it's basically mostly in the San Fernando Valley. There's a slide there. And then down in the Central Basin. So in the Central Basin, we've got
rights that are unused, right?
We have rights that are unused, and we have two sets of wells down there, what we call the 99th Street and the Manhattan wells, that need to be refurbished. And then in the San Fernando Valley, we hopefully want to be redeveloping our southern wells and replacing possibly our Pollock wells. We also have monitoring wells for the number of agreements that we've just secured with Honeywell and Lockheed for those remediation programs. And then our own remediation efforts need a number of monitoring wells in addition. So we've been working with the state and the regional board, and we have a technical advisory committee, and they are eager to have more monitoring going on for our North Hollywood and our Tujunga groundwater remediation plants.
Have you contracted?
Because, you know, we're going to be moving, possibly moving plumes with our pumping activities, so we want to have a good eyes on if it's actually happening or not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where those Central Basin wells are, but obviously there's a bunch going on down there. Will the new wells there increase your utilization of your rights, or will they remain unchanged, at least in this? In
this period, it's more just a reliability issue.
Okay. Okay. And have you contracted? It didn't seem like it with Yellow Jacket before.
I don't believe so. No.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Tough dealing with a commissioner who's also in the groundwater development business.
Yeah. I have dealt with Yellow Jacket. My comments will end there. Okay. Motion to approve.
Second. Susan?
Berard,
Aye.
McLean Hill,
Aye.
Neiman Brady,
Aye.
Reyes,
Aye.
Levine,
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, we go to item 19, Safe Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Applications for Water System Capital Improvement Projects. Commissioner Barad, do you have specific questions or do you wish a presentation?
I have some specific questions.
Go ahead.
Okay. When a couple of years ago, when we were discussing the water fountains throughout the Los Angeles Unified School District and the quality of water throughout the city, I was assured, and our board was assured, that the water system was acceptable. Now I see that the line here that the DWP is developing and implementing acceptable water quality solutions to equalize the quality of water throughout the city through infrastructure improvements, and this seems to be counterintuitive to what we were told. So I would like to know what the thinking is on this, and what's been happening in the last couple of years, and is the water acceptable? According to this, it's not acceptable. And, you know, have we then been living with unacceptable water quality throughout the city?
Sure. So obviously, all our water meets all state and federal regulations, and it is perfectly safe and clean to drink. We are, in our industry, in the water industry, it's a heavily regulated industry in terms of water quality compliance and water quality regulations. So we are primarily regulated under the Safe Drinking Water Act at the federal level, and that's promulgated at the state level. And we have a number of projects and programs to continually comply with that. Those regulations are always increasing. But at all times, the water is safe to drink. And the statement there is to basically always looking to improve the quality of water. So there's always new and better and more efficient ways to do that, whether that's replacing disinfectant plants and other stations throughout the city to improve the drinking water quality. So it's not to suggest that we are below, but it's always improving. And so we do that a number of ways, mostly just replacing infrastructure as well as adding new. So what this item before you is, at its core, is the board authorizing myself and Ann basically to enter into very favorable loan agreements with the state of California. The federal government and the state offer low interest loans, lower than what we can get commercially. And the department has benefited from that greatly over the years. We have brought in over $1 billion worth of loans, and as your board package there says, I think has saved on interest payments nearly, $679 million in interest payments.
All right, then what was the water quality in the drinking fountains for the Los Angeles Unified School District, a couple of years ago? Was that not safe? Were we told it was safe, but it wasn't? I mean, I'm still trying to grasp what's going on here. When it's safe, when it's not safe.
So the issue with LAUSD is what we call premise plumbing. It's the plumbing on their property. So it's either their pipes and the joints that had lead in the joints, or the fixtures in the water fountains themselves that had lead in it. And they were out of compliance with the lead requirements for drinking water. So the water that the LADWP serves to its customers meets all those requirements. It's once it gets on to their property and the pipes that they own and maintain is where they had issues. So LAUSD has their own programs and strategies to deal with that, and obviously they have dealt with that in a variety of ways, and they also do not serve children water that doesn't meet the lead standards. So some of that is through just turning off their fountains, and most of it just replacing fountains that don't meet their standards. So the water from Water and Power has always been safe to drink. It's once it hits a customer's property that might change.
All right, so are we somehow managing or looking at what the school district is doing, or do they do their own thing and we do our thing?
So the school district has a pretty sophisticated testing program, and they maintain and operate their own system. We are in contact with them on a pretty regular basis, and basically both just from a philosophical position as well as some state legislation, we're required to partner with them in the sense that if they need our assistance, then we will provide it. So we're always at the ready for LAUSD if they need us for, let's say, monitoring and testing any of their fountains or any of their plumbing. For the most part, they have the capacity and the wherewithal to do that on their own.
Have they asked for our help?
They have not.
All right, so...
In terms of water quality testing?
Yeah. So we don't, at this point, we're trusting what they're saying? If they say it's safe, it's safe?
That's their responsibility.
Oh boy, that's a stretch. Okay. Well, I would like to know what we can do to make sure and to reassure people that the water is safe and to drink throughout the city, and of course this would include the school district. It seems like we're getting two different stories here.
Well, I believe the school district would say that all their fountains are safe to drink, so that is a consistent message.
Yeah, that's the message, but do we have proof of that?
I would have to check with our staff. I believe that, so they are regulated as well as a school and school district, and I believe that they have to post their results as well, and I will get that information to the board, to you specifically, so that you can be assured of what the district is actually doing in terms of guaranteeing that their water is safe to drink out of their fountains and plumbing.
Yeah, I would appreciate that, yes, and I would like, to have something that I can look at that would assure me of that. I mean, a lot of this that we're talking about is what prompted the bucket brigade. What were we doing with all that water that wasn't safe to drink? and they were just flushing it down the drain. I'd like to have something that we're requesting from them to see what the situation is, more than just what they're saying.
Yeah. I will say, just to reinforce what Rick said, I do believe they actually publish their water quality results by school now, and that started a number of years ago. But essentially, it's almost, if you went to a hotel and the water we provide at the hotel is fine, you're presuming that the water you're drinking in your room in the hotel is also fine, because they say that their plumbing in the hotel is fine. LA Unified, we give them water that's fine to drink, as Rick said. And then in the past, before they started working on their water fountains and had the budget for that, they had a flushing program, and that's, as you mentioned, the Bucket Brigade was with the flushing program. And so they would flush all their fountains every morning prior to the students showing up, and that was because if there was lead in the pipes, it would accumulate as the water sat overnight. During the course of the day when it's normally used, it wouldn't be an issue. So then they started replacing, and as Rick said, they shut off fountains that weren't working. They've done replacements. And so my understanding from talking to LA Unified, the facilities manager last time he was here, he talked about many of those fountains have already been changed out. So they've done a substantial amount of work on their own. But as Rick said, it's the premise plumbing. So the water that we provide meets every standard. But just like any other premise, just like anybody's home, what happens to that water afterwards is out of our control and out of our jurisdiction.
All right, so if we don't approve this, then what? What happens if we don't approve this?
We lose on the ability to access low-interest loans. This is just a financial matter.
It'll just cost our customers more money. This is work that we would do and work that qualifies, and so it's basically a cheaper way to get the capital money.
Okay, I think it puts us in an awkward position, frankly.
Well, remember that this is not focused on LA Unified. This is focused, as Rick said, on making improvements in our system. Even though the water all meets standards, the water everywhere is not the same. And so, aging infrastructure, water age, circulation patterns, older pipe, all these things can affect water quality, even within standards. It may not change the quality of the water that in terms of a health standpoint, but it may change the quality of water that people perceive or people see. And so this is money to work on our system to make the water more consistent throughout the system, even though it comes from a variety of different of sources, depending on where you're located and where the different sources plug in. So this money is not aimed for LA Unified. This is aimed for our own infrastructure and work that we need to do.
But it includes the.
It would not include LA Unified. No, this work would not include LA Unified. This is funding source for us, and we would not be actually allowed to use our funding on LA Unified property, because that would be a misuse of our ratepayers' dollars.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Levine, you need to unmute.
Can I ask Dr. Pickle, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Did you have anything you might offer on this as a third-party independent observer?
It's a savings for our ratepayers, plain and simple.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move approval.
I second. Susie?
Berard?
Please come back to me.
McLean Hill?
Yes.
Neiman Brady?
Yes.
Reyes?
Yes.
Levine?
Aye.
Commissioner Berard?
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, so that completes the public agenda.
Actually, Commissioner, we still have filed items.
Oh, yes, we do. Water system. Rich?
You're muted,
I
Rich.
take it you, Rich?
Yes, you have our April report, and there's some really good items in there on activities that the water system is engaged in during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as some activities that are going out in the field. So I commend the reading to you.
Okay, are there questions on this item? Hearing none, we have the budget and we have closed session. I think it's prudent now to move to the budget, and then we can do closed session after that.
Commissioner, before we take the budget, which may be a longer presentation, can we do a 10-minute comfort break and set up the budget, please?
Good idea.
So I would recommend that if on your screens, beside the mute button, there's probably a little video button. It's next to the microphone, just to the right of the microphone. So I'd recommend just hitting the video button, and then when you're back in your seat, go ahead and turn the video back on. So at least have a little bit of privacy as you move around your homes. Pardon me?
It looks like a camera?
Looks like a camera, yeah, with a slash to it. And if it's black now and you click it, it'll become red. And then you'll be able to move around in the privacy of your homes, and then when you're ready, come back on.
We'll reconvene at 11:50.
Okay, thank you.
We are in recess.
recording?
Ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, Marty, budget.
Roll call.
Oh, roll call.
Berard,
Oh, present.
McLean Hill,
Present.
Neiman Brady,
Present.
Reyes,
Present.
Levine.
Present.
We're ready to start.
Marty?
So, remember 2 meetings ago, you approved the preliminary budget, and last meeting we brought back some cuts to that budget, which put us in line with the current year's budget. We have done some additional cutting, and also just kind of laid out more what our, little more discussion about what our work plan is. So this is to show you kind of where the numbers look now. So these are lower numbers than what you saw last time, and a little lower than the current year's budget. Also, there's quite a few slides here. I made everybody leave all the slides in. If you want to go through all the slides, we're more than welcome to, but we'll at least be able to say skip and go to the next one. But I wanted to make sure, because Commissioner McLean Hill asked a very good question about what does it mean? What's the context of this? And so certainly saying what we got done doesn't really tell the story, because the question is, what did we want to get done? What do we need to get done? And what were our plans? And so, and also, how do some of these things connect, especially in the IT world, where systems rely on each other, IT relies on the systems. We as a company rely on new IT projects that are being launched. So I've tried to make sure there's detailed enough discussion in here. The folks who are heading up all the areas that are spending all the money will get to describe what they're doing and what they plan to accomplish and put it in context. So this could either take a while or not a while. We'll just go through and then answer questions as we go to make sure that you have a good picture. And then after this, we would bring back the final budget at the last meeting in May, and that would be the one that we would hope would have answered everything and go for approval. And I ideally don't envision having to make another budget presentation at that time unless there's specific areas you wanted to see. But again, these things get approved by you independently. You have a budget that you get to look at, and then we have water pass-through charges hit at a certain time of year, power pass-through charges hit at a certain time of year. And then of course what's going on with sales and revenue is going to just kind of escalate over the course of months. So it's important in my mind that we give you a complete picture of everything and how these things tie together. It's certainly not fair to come back and say, well, you have to pass a pass-through because you approved the budget. So I want you to understand that that how these things interlink together, and to make sure that that we're not putting something in front of you that you don't also understand what that means down the road for decision making. That said, I think our budget overall continues all the programs we were doing. It continues infrastructure work, our obligations in terms of things like wildfire liability, water quality compliance, turning to more green energy and local water resources are all continued. We believe it reflects the rate that we think we can actually spend the money, and so we've tried to take any I wouldn't say fat in the budget, but any margin that we left ourselves, because we don't want to be collecting rates that we can't spend and can't put to good use. And so, at the same time, we don't want to go backwards. We don't want to walk away from progress that we've made or slow down in important directions for the future. Sooner or later, we will get past this, and we need the goals that we have for the city to be intact, and to make sure that we're continue to go in the same direction in terms of providing water and power for the future and the other support systems here that we need to function well as a business. So that said, I'll turn it over to Ann. I told her she gets to be the Ann of the hour, so that's my last one and only bad joke for the day. We'll go through the budget, and then and again, any questions as we go. We'll try not to drag out any longer, but I want to make sure that you're getting answered the things that you want to see. So with that, Ann?
Yeah, thank you, Marty. So for the presentation today, we want to talk about the proposed budget, the financial summary, power system achievements, water system achievements, joint system achievements, and then the next step. So on this slide, you can see in yellow the preliminary budget of $7.8 billion, which was what was approved on March 31st. From that last meeting, we've revised the budget down to the 1920 level, actually just a little bit below that. So the next yellow column is the proposed final budget, and that's $7.382 billion. It's $418 million below the preliminary budget and $44 million below the approved 1920 budget. Now, one of the things we want to call your attention to is our sales forecast. This slide depicts our energy sales, and generally it's dropped each year because of conservation. However, in fiscal year 1920, we're seeing a 6.5% drop in our sales forecast, mostly due to COVID-19, and we're projecting a 6.9% drop for fiscal year 2021. When we brought the preliminary budget to you, we had assumed 22,342 gigawatt hours of sales. And based on the reduced sales, conservation, and weather, we're actually expecting 20,808 gigawatt hours of sales for fiscal year 2021.
So to clarify, because we spent a lot of time arguing about graphically showing things over the phone. So the blue line's all consistent until we get to the current year. We'd expected to then be on the path of the green line. And of course, that's certainly not true. And so you might ask, why would it be on the path of the green line? Why is it going up? So conservation has been driving power demands down. But then we also had expected an uptick in electrification. And so we know with the Metro and LADOT buses going to electric buses, with other fleets such as UPS and others going to electric trucks, we expect an increase in electric charging of vehicles and other things associated with electrifying the society. And so we had anticipated that at some point this was been a very kind of steadily decreasing power demand would rebound and start to increase. But we don't know exactly the schedule of those projects now because they're not driven by us. And at the same time, we're seeing this actual reduction in demand. So, but that is why, because if you look at a financial, which you'll see another time further out, we projected this green line to continue to increase every year as more things, particularly in transportation, become electrified. But it'll eventually catch up. But for the time being, it's set back by a severe drop in demand right now.
Right. And this is the sales that we're projecting our 2021 budget on.
Marty and Ann, I have a quick question about, can you go back to the last slide?
Sure.
Where's Ben? Has Ben
in terms of 1920 and 2021, I take it that this significant drop in 1920 is all COVID related.
Yes.
And I take it that the smaller drop in 2021 is as well. But I'm curious what your underlying assumptions are with regard to the overall LA economy. I assume that drove basically both of those numbers, but I wonder what assumptions you're using with regard to comparing the economy that we will have in LA in 1920 with 2021.
As part of our load forecast, I can collect that data for you. It'll tell you the number of new housing units to be built and various economic structures. Basically, when we do our sales forecast, we use the UCLA Economic Outlook, and we use those predictions as part of our load forecast.
And have they updated their outlook since the pandemic hit?
Yes, they have, and that's what we've based our fiscal year 2021 budget forecast on.
Okay, I'd be curious just to take a look at that at some point.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course, the hard part is not knowing when some of these future demands will hit. So it's interesting, in the water side, you have conservation driving demands down lower than they've been since now we're thinking the 1960s. But there's no new water use coming up. In the power world, we have conservation really taking hold on top of the fact that you now have the virus that's affecting everything. But the projection is that you'll have substantial growth in the future as we electrify. And so a lot of those projects we can provide the power for, but until the customer actually makes it, have those demands materialize, we don't know when it's really going to hit.
And all of that will be hugely influenced by how the economy recovers.
Exactly. And in a perfect world, you'd say that we're going to have a 3-month void in the economy, and that's money that it's gone. It's gone forever. There's taxes that won't be made up, and hotel taxes and revenues and things. As you get further away, it's just like looking at an aerial. As you get further away, what was a pothole on the ground becomes a divot, then becomes a depression, and from far enough away, it just becomes like a flat surface. So same thing with the budget. At some point, this will, after enough years, this money will get kind of lost in the shuffle, and the sales get lost in the shuffle. But for the time being, it's a rather large impact.
Yeah, that's why I'm just curious about the underlying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Can we forward a copy of the study?
Yes, we can.
Yes, so you can see what UCLA's put out. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So the next slide depicts power system operating revenues, and based on our current projections, we had started with a preliminary budget, approved budget for the current year of $4.76 million. We're actually seeing that drop by $111 million. And then when we provided the preliminary budget for the fiscal year 2021, we had estimated $4.330 billion. We're now looking at $4.162 billion. So that's $168 million less that we'll be collecting for our revenue requirement. On our fuel and purchase power budget that supports our sales, we're seeing a $21 million drop from our proposed budget for our budget for 1920, and we're seeing a $55 million drop on our preliminary budget for fiscal year 2021. And we did go back and look at the increase in cost from 18-19, and we did see increases in Navajo Generating. We are decommissioning that plant, and decommissioning expense is part of the fuel and purchase power budget. We had additional $51 million in operations from IPP and $29 million in geothermal costs.
So, but this, as Reiko noted earlier, as we're using less power, we're also buying less fuel. So it's not a one-for-one because a lot of times you may be buying fuel for peak when the sun's going down, and because we try not to run gas units except when we have to. But there is there is a drop in fuel needs associated directly with the drop in demand.
On the capital power system budget, we had shown a $1.8 billion capital plan as part of the preliminary 2021 budget. Power system has relooked at that, and they're proposing $1.6 billion, which is a $204 million drop for the proposed fiscal year. On the O&M side, our preliminary budget was $1.483 billion. We've been able to reduce that down to $1.44 billion, which is a $43 million drop. On the debt service, our proposed budget was $651 million, and the new one is $659 million. We converted some of our variable rate debt in the last month, so we took out $372 million of variable rate debt. We actually sold that for $272 million, so that premium is going to help reduce that debt, but we do have some front-loaded debt service costs for fiscal year 2021.
Ultimately, it's a savings.
Ultimately, a savings of 4% present value. Now, the next slide shows the power system average cents per kilowatt hour, and you can see from fiscal year 16-17, it was at 15.2 cents. And it jumps to 16.36 cents. And going up the curve, as part of the approved 1920 budget, we had assumed 19.2 cents. Based on our projections now, it looks like it's going to be closer to 19.03 cents. However, even though we've cut our budget spending, it looks like our average system cost will be 20.4 cents per kilowatt hour. And that's a difference between what we're planning to spend and what our sales are going to be. When we had the preliminary budget, assuming we had more sales, it would have been 19.65 cents.
So again, so this again is a fallout of less units. So the unit cost is different. Overall revenue collected is less.
Right. Yeah. And this slide shows more of a chart that says on the preliminary budget, if it had been approved and sales had been still considered at the higher amount, our average cents per kilowatt hour would have been 19.6 cents. If we had kept the preliminary spending, but we saw the reduced sales, it would have been 20.6 cents. With the cuts to the budget and the reduced sales, we're now anticipating 20.4 cents per kilowatt hour for fiscal year 2021. On the water side, we've also seen an update in our sales. We had projected 213.7 million 100 cubic feet of water sales. We're now projecting 195.2, and this is mostly due to weather and conservation.
And just to clarify, and Rich, you might want to jump in on this. This is not really COVID related. This is more, we had two different methodologies looking at sales, and we took the more conservative one because it seemed to be more accurate than our previous numbers that we'd projected. So.
Right. We had in the past been looking at like a 50-year history, and I had staff say, well, hydrology has changed in a half a century. So we did both that, looking at runoff to a more, a 30-year time frame. But then as well, in terms of demand, we're also aligning ourselves with our Green New Deal goals of getting water use down to 103 gallons per capita per person. So we're basing sales on what the demand that we're actually projecting to hit.
What would the number need to be if you had to hit the target right now per capita? Roughly. What are we talking about?
Well, we're at 104 right now.
Right, but the blue. What do you need to get to again?
So the 195 in terms of billing you 195 million is based on it's either 104 or 103 gallons per capita per day.
Okay, and the target you need to get to is?
That is the target, yeah.
Oh, that is the target?
Yes, we're basing the sales on the target.
Okay, I thought you were basing it on getting to the target, which may be one and the same, but...
They are, in this year, they're essentially one and the same.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we reconciled the target.
On the water system total operating revenue for fiscal year 2021, we had been projecting 1.496 billion. We've reduced that by 67 million to get to 1.429 billion. Our purchased water is still expected to be close. We had put 241 million in the preliminary budget. It looks like it can be shaved a little bit to 239 million, and this is really due to lower snowpack and more requirement on using purchased water. And for comparative purposes, we just wanted to show we did reduce our use of purchased water. If you look back to fiscal year 14-15 and 15-16, you can see that we had to rely on purchased water quite a bit, but we had quite a few years there where we had more rain and more aqueduct sales.
And what happens if you need to exceed the 239? I think there are some forecasts that are suggesting some sort of mega drought. So let's say in the year, I know you have forecasts based on the snowpack, but just for what it's worth, if you end up having to get up to 260. What happens then?
So the way the adjustment works is a 12-month projection, look ahead, and then a 12-month reconciliation. So that allows it to basically smooth. So you're always projecting, what you're going to do and reconciling with what you actually did, and that keeps it so that it's a rather smoother fluctuation. And so,
is it a rolling 12-month or rolling month? Over 12 months.
It's 12 months from at the time. Was every other year, every.
It's every 12 months, and every 6 months we come to the board and ask for a reestimate.
Right, yeah, so it used to be quarterly estimate, now it's a semi-annual estimate, but they'll do a projection at that point. So it'll reconcile a couple times a year, and rates have gone down. I mean, it was during the heavy rains, the water rate, effective water rate went down as we bought less water. And so it does work both ways. Some agencies actually embed their MET purchase in the regular water rate, but it really puts their financials at risk, because it may mean they can do more projects or less projects because they don't know how much they're going to spend on water. Ours being a pass-through means basically our customers pay for exactly what they get. And also, of course, the numbers are not only affected by the weather, but also with Rich's conservation programs driving demands down. Every drop of water less we use is a drop of water less we purchase. So we're always saving on the most expensive water.
On water system capital, we can see that we've also been able to drop that from $920 million to $816 million. And this was in line with the Office of Public Accountability's recommendation to keep the water system capital at that level. On the water O&M costs, we've been able to shave a little bit from the 2021 budget, from 602 to 595. The bigger drop is actually in fiscal year 1920, where we had estimated on the approved budget 584, and it's going to be ending closer towards 560. On water system debt service, we haven't seen any changes from our preliminary budget. It'll still stay at $359 million. Now, this is the water system average rate. And so you can see that with the preliminary budget, we had assumed a $7.38 average rate. And with our cuts, we've been able to bring it down to $7.31. And again, this is the same as the power system chart, where the preliminary budget showed a system average rate of $7.38. If we hadn't been able to cut the budget and had the lower sales, it would have been $7.46. But with the reduced cuts and with the reduced sales volume, the projected is $7.31 for fiscal year 2021. And I'm going to turn it over to Andy and Reiko to talk about power system.
Sure. So if we can go to the next slide. One of the biggest programs we have is our Power System Reliability Program. And this year we are separating out a specific program that we're adding for wildfire hardening. So we've actually increased the budget by $28 million so that we can start implementing what we need to do regulatorily to make our system more robust. And so we will have poles, cross arms, transformers, that you're used to seeing in the PSRP rate metric. So we've added additional components for that, specifically for wildfire hardening. And so we anticipate having a contract later part of this year, so it'll be about a half a year for fiscal year 2021. Next slide. Also, as part of our program, we have infrastructure and reliability projects. And listed on the bottom half of this are 10 circuits in which we replaced some transmission or upgraded the lines. And of the 10 projects, 7 of those are completed. You'll see the one highlighted in red. That was one we were set to start in about April of this year to have it completed by June. But when COVID hit, we were really concerned that if we had any issues with infections of either contractors or employees, it really could jeopardize summer reliability and the ability to bring this project back online. So we made the decision to defer this project specifically for COVID and the availability of resources. The last two on this list are set to be completed in next fiscal year. So we've, for these projects, we've spent $250 million and done about 45.5 miles worth of upgrade. Next slide. We also have, next slide please. We also have underground transmission circuits that are part of our PSRP program also. And when we replace those circuits, it reduces the number of splices on those cables, and each splice is a potential point of failure, so it will reduce those failure points by 45%. There's a little typo. It says February 22nd. It was actually February 19th when the mayor announced that we would no longer be doing our once-through cooling repowering as we had planned. Because of that, we've had to really ramp up our transmission projects. And you can see on the bottom half where we have the cost per mile, there's a significant increase because we've increased our cable that we use to go from 138 kV to 230 kV. So that'll increase the amount of power we can transport on those lines by 80%. So there's a significant cost increase that goes with that. Next slide, please.
Rico, real fast.
Yes.
So in terms of the transmission projects, the reductions to the budget is not, I mean, other than what we can physically get done based on who we have available to work and design and all that, there's not a restriction on finishing these projects as scheduled. Is that correct?
No, we've budgeted appropriately. I mentioned the project that was pushed off, so that funding would have been in this year, and now it gets pushed off to next year. So there's probably another project that gets pushed off for another year. But this is not unusual. We've had a number of projects in the pipeline that were planned, but for instance, when Aliso Canyon failed, because we couldn't take the outages of the transmission lines, if you take an outage to upgrade, it requires more in-basin gas use. And because there were restrictions on the inventory field, we just couldn't do those upgrades. So they got pushed out for a couple years. So we budgeted appropriately based on the projects that we believe we can get completed, and those include the ones on the prior page.
So Marty, this was a 5-year project that the board approved going back to fiscal year 16-17 to replace our aged 138 underground transmission system. When the mayor's new OTC message came out, then at that point we determined we would upgrade them to 230 instead of 138, using that same approval from the board that the board had approved. So this is currently, and this work here is done by our, one of our contract groups. So this isn't impacted by our resources, or it's mainly impacted by, like Reiko said, the ability to get an outage to schedule.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next slide. We also have a program where we look at our receiving stations and our distribution stations, and we have a number of testing and maintenance and troubleshooting protocols that we go through every year. And we've kept the protocols for batteries and the relays to be same for next year as they have been for the current year. The next slide. One of the things we look at in our substation assets are, do we replace that asset or do we do a life extension? And this primarily relates to transformers and circuit breakers. So we go through a condition-based assessment where we will look at the age, the wear and tear. We'll do some analysis using dissolved gas analysis, and based on the results of these different metrics to use, we will decide, okay, that has to be replaced, or no, so that we don't replace them too early. We think we can get some more life extension by just doing a little maintenance. So this relates to those programs that we do with our own forces. Next slide. One of the PSRP metrics is how many poles we replace, and we are pretty spot on our targets. Initially, we had planned to do more, but they got scaled back because we do have resource limitations, and we had planned to have more crews on staff than we do now. We haven't been able to get up to the staffing level that we had anticipated, so the targets were adjusted accordingly, and we spent about, over this 5-year period, about $500 million on this program.
So you'll continue at the same level next year, even with reduced budget?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because we didn't reduce the budget here.
Okay.
On the cross arms, so on the poles, when we replace the cross arms that are deteriorated, Again, we have metrics, and we've kept that flat for next year, and we've spent about $278 million over the 5-year period.
Rachel?
Yes.
So do cross arms have less of a useful life than poles typically do? Is that, are they not?
Yes, typically the cross arms will not, the average lifespan of a pole is supposed to be 40 to 50 years. We actually get more life out of those for the most part. Cross arms, the wood cross arms that we've had in the past, typically you get 20 to 30 years out of. Now we've replaced those with a newer fiberglass arm, which will have a longer lifespan. That'll get us closer to the lifespan of the pole. But with the well over 1 million cross arms we have in the system, we'll be replacing the old wood ones for many years to come.
Forever, yeah. Yeah, but it's a good question, and that's and this is one of the things that Andy's crews looked at is, the new materials, and so certainly in the wildfire areas, looking at steel poles, there's composite poles, but the use of the fiberglass cross arms will hopefully get the cross arms and the poles on a little more of the same schedule. Since when you put the pole has to be replaced, you have to do everything. Do the cross arms, you still have to replace all the wires and move them all over. So it's it's more work to do the whole thing, but you're doing probably the lion's share of the dangerous work when you deal with the cross arms anyway. So.
All right, next slide. The other piece of our metric are the transformer replacements, and you'll see a big spike in fiscal year 18-19. We actually did a program to proactively look at transformers and probability of failures in readiness for summer, and I think that program works really well, but for transformers. So that was the year we had the big heat storm, but we saw failures further into the system on the circuits rather than the transformers. And we spent about $160 million on this over the 5-year period. Next slide. We have a number of different training programs within the department, and starting with our electric distribution mechanic training program, we've got 202 in there, and we project graduations of about 112 of them. On the electric mechanic trainee, again, 266 hired. We anticipate 188 of them graduating. And then for electric station operators, we've hired 86 into the program, and we expect about 47 of them to graduate. Next slide. When we look forward to next year and we look at what training classes we anticipate, we have on the EDMT program, we anticipate 40 new trainees. That'll be 2 classes of 20. On the EMT program, another 40 coming in. Again, that's 2 classes of 20. On the station operators, 30 of those, 2 classes of 15. And for the underground distribution conduit mechanic and the electric meter setters program, we will have 1 class for each of those.
Andy, a real quick question. Even though we've got the telecommuting and the work from home and everything at this point, these are critical classes. You were able to actually start another class to meet our needs. Is that correct recently?
Well, we've hired, we had just started a new class of electrical distribution mechanic trainees and electrical mechanic trainees. We had started right about the time all of this started. So, and then we brought a new class of electrical craft helpers in. One of the areas we're limited here, we'd love to hire more trainees, but we're limited to the number of trainees we can have at any one given time due to the number of crews we have in the field. If we have too many trainees per crew, then the trainees do not get the proper amount of training and then are not prepared at the end, and that helps to lead to a lower success rate. So we look at right now that we're optimal with those number of trainees and to keep the crews in the field staffed at the appropriate levels.
And Andy, what have you done so you can continue the training program with the social distancing and everything going on? Can you describe that?
So what we've done at our training facility, we're bringing less people in. We're keeping, crews. At any given time, we would have 4 or 5 classes of trainees into the training center. So we're limiting that to about 2 at a time, and we've converted our training to outside For those of you who have ever been to our rodeo grounds, you'll have seen the Ted Dario Pavilion, which is just an outdoor covered seating area. And we've managed to turn that into an outdoor classroom. So we're able to do our classroom training outdoors. It's a large area to where we can keep the number of trainees socially distanced and still accomplish their classroom training, which is critically important to their training. And then, you know, we're continuing to do the outdoor training where they're up on the poles using masks. So they're all wearing masks during all of this training, the instructors as well. And then we're, like I said, continuing to keep them at the proper social distancing while they're working out in the training areas.
Thanks. So I wanted the board to know that while we're, for the most part, not hiring right now, there are a few positions that were in progress, but in the critical classes out in the field where staffing has become so essential, we have found a way to work through this and continue to be able to bring people on and get them trained, even though we're dealing with the pandemic. So, thanks, Andy.
All right, next slide. One of the programs you hear a lot about is the electric vehicle program and the rebate program that we have. In fact, in October, you approved an additional $40 million in rebates. And since that time, we've had a 400% increase in the rebate applications. The nice thing about this program is that it's not rate funded. We use it for an outside source of, we get credits for the amount of electric vehicles we have, and from that, we are able to monetize those and use that to fund this instead of ratepayer funds. And one of the big benefits of electric vehicles, in addition to the increased load that will come, is the significant greenhouse gas impacts. When you look at the carbon intensity from an electric vehicle versus a gas vehicle, there's like a 3.5 times reduction by using electric vehicles. If you look at where our the makeup of our portfolio will be in 2036. So. Couple different components. We have $47 million in rebates for commercials and DC fast chargers. We have $13 million in the budget for EV infrastructure, both at DWP facilities and the city, and $6 million for residential. That includes the used EV program, so we can hit all areas of the city and hopefully reach some of the harder to reach areas to allow more electric vehicles throughout the territory. Next slide. One of our big success okay, did I miss one?
Did we miss one?
Oh, I see, the slide is gone.
Oh.
The next slide.
That might not have made my cut, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I saved you.
I was confused. So, this had a graph of the ramp up of renewables and how we plan to get through 2036. It showed how we met our 20% state requirement and the 31%. Our next goal is the 33% by the end of this year. We think there'll be no problem hitting that again because load is low, and so we are getting the advantage of all the renewables we have. Just minor curtailments. We also show next year we anticipate coming to you with a solar project. Okay, this has completely changed since I looked at it, so I apologize for that. We will be bringing to you, assuming negotiations go well, a 600 megawatt solar facility, 330 megawatts of wind, and about 5.4 megawatts of biomass to meet our Senate Bill 859 requirements. We also anticipate next year 65 megawatts of geothermal coming on, and that was a portfolio of projects that you had previously approved. As well as got the Eland Solar, and during the current year we had the phase 3 of the Springbok come online, as well as another one of the smaller geothermals that's part of that portfolio of 10 projects that I talked about. On the next slide, we talk about the whole renewable portfolio standard and what percentage of our retail sales are made up by renewables. And for 1920, it shows the goal of 33%, and we think we'll be up to above 35%. It just depends on what the final mix ends up, but we don't anticipate any problem. On the next slide, one of the projects that got cut from the budget was about a $27.5 million. We have, it's called a spoil pile. So every time we go through a modernization or of the Castaic, There's a bunch of sediment built up in the Elderberry tail bay that we remove and pile up. There's about a half-mile long pile that is the result of 20 years worth of accumulation, and we had anticipated putting that in the budget this year, and it's gotten kicked down the road a couple times, but we anticipate being able to do that in 21-22. Next slide. Another project that got put off for another year when we when we repowered the Valley Generation Station. We have not demolished the units 1 through 4, that the red and white stacks that are in the middle of the picture there. And we had initially planned to do that this year. I think the repower was actually, in 2013, so this has gotten pushed off a couple years, but it's about a $26 million project that we put off another year just to reduce the impact to rates and budget. Next slide.
This will be one that is going to be critical, though, to do next fiscal year because, to do more stored energy projects or other projects here at Valley to reduce the use of the gas, we're going to need to clear out that, remove them and be able to free up space in order to put energy projects in there. So this is one we're deferring this year, but we'll need to do next year.
Yeah.
With this deferral, will we be able to meet California's mandate for 100% clean energy by 2045? Are we still going to be on track?
We're still on track for that. We don't see this impacting our ability to meet those targets.
Thank you.
On the next slide, for the information advanced technology, next slide, there are 3 main programs. There it goes. 3 main projects within this area. We have the distribution automation. That was a project that was not included in the original rate plan, but it really is the backbone that allows many things in the future. It provides the framework to be able to add controls and sensors on the distribution system to have more situational awareness of what's happening on the system. It is also the backbone for smart grid once we do that implementation. This portion of the project is $193 million, so we continue with that. Smart grid was also not included in the rate plan. That's about $360 million. And so what we've done here is any meters that we buy, we make sure that they will be smart grid enabled, so it'll have the technology so that we could use the distribution automation backbone and framework that we have implemented. And the last thing is the geographic information system upgrade. We will be getting ready for phase 2, and so we will be issuing a RFP later this year to continue that program. And next slide, finally, the last thing is...
Rigo, so just to highlight this, so, we did debate this about whether we continue with distribution automation. There's substantial expenditures this coming year, and next year, the following year after that. But as Rigo said, this is kind of a linchpin for a lot of things that we want to do to modernize the power system. And so, it's the kind of thing you could say, well, we don't have to have it in order to keep running, but it's a critical piece of the future. And so we decided that we could afford to leave this project in the budget because it was of that kind of importance to us. Sorry, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, and we only left in $1.2 million on smart grid, and that's an overall $360 million project. So just enough to keep it breathing. And finally, the last slide relates to fleet services and the investments we have in there. There are a number of vehicle purchases to keep a mix, as we do fleet replacements of our older vehicles. We also have, fleet also manages a number of contracts, which would be the fuel contracts, the vehicle rentals when we need them. And then there's a number of construction equipment, either that come with or without operators. Sometimes we use our own, sometimes we bring in the contract crews to assist with those capital projects that we do. And finally, we've talked about this before on the aviation. We are ordering 2 helicopters that have the twin engines. Now that we're using helicopters for human external cargo, this significantly increases the safety element So we've ordered one that should be in at the end of next fiscal year in June, and then the second one will be July of the, 1 month later, but in a different fiscal year. And that, yes.
Just going back to the smart meters, so I don't forget that based on the Mayor's Green New Deal, there is a goal for that. Do you anticipate being delayed on meeting that goal? Because it says here that we're just going to begin large-scale meter installation fiscal year 22-23. How does that play out?
So it all depends on the next rate plan. As I said, currently these are not funded. So if they get into the next, we have to have the funding to be able to do this program. And so the next rate plan that's brought forth will have to include this component. And then we can move forward on it. That's one of the big pieces holding us back is the funding for it.
But all the meters that we do put in will be smart capability. So the question is whether there's something to connect to or not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And so we'll turn it back now over to Rich
Thanks,
to talk
Rick.
about water
Andy.
system.
You're muted, Rich.
Always important to unmute.
we only use this system every morning.
So this first slide just shows the level of spend that we have been at and where we want to continue to be at, and explain a little bit of the challenges and how we've been successful to get to this point. And it basically is a bundle of the 6 remaining slides that I have. The total dollars for capital is basically in 3 major groups that accounts for almost 90% of the spend, and that's in water infrastructure, which would be a lot of our linear assets, but also other facilities, not in these other categories, which are our water quality investments and water supply investments. And water quality and water infrastructure account for basically 3/4 of the spend. Now, our capital program is unique in the retail water industry in the United States. It's probably one of the largest, if not the largest, sustained CapEx programs in the nation. And it's at, hovering anywhere between $600 and $700 million a year. Now, we do have challenges in spending that. And when I got into this position, I knew one of my biggest challenges was basically to be able to deliver on the funds that would be coming towards the water system from the new rate package. But the challenges we have is, somewhat similar to the power system, is just staffing challenges, getting people in the door, keeping up with retirements as one thing. And then just a lot of our big spend comes from significant individual projects that we contract out for the construction. And there are often challenges in obtaining compliances of agreement with labor to get those out. But we have been successful in the past in getting to this level, and I believe it gives us confidence getting into the future. In other words, we've proven that we can get to this level of spending. Just a number of years ago, we were averaging at or mostly under $400 million a year. So we've increased our spend, our ability to deliver on projects by 50% in just a handful of years. And our staffing has increased 12% over the last 4 years. So we look to the future, and we're pretty confident that we'll be able to deliver on the funds that our ratepayers will be giving to us. So in the next slide, we'll start looking at water infrastructure. And by that, as I said, is a lot of our linear assets with main line and trunk line, and then the appurtenances go with that, obviously, our cash registers, otherwise known as water meters. So you can see the numbers there and what we want to replace coming up in this next year, and we will try to maintain that rate of 174,000 feet of main line a year until we can get some contracts to get additional crews out there. And as it notes there, we're really going to be prioritizing on those high risk of failure pipes, those older ones in corroded soils and those sorts of things. And then the number of meters there is on a 20-year replacement cycle. And trunk lines, meaning those pipelines that are 20 inches or greater, we have a separate goal of trying to get over 11,000 feet a year in that. Looking towards the goals that were set upon us in the last rate increase, we've delivered on about 87% of our distribution main that we've installed. And again, a lot of the ability not to get to at or over 100% deals with staffing and some equipment issues as well. But with our other goals that we committed to in the 16-19 rate increase in terms of putting in, replacing large valves, retrofitting pressure regulating stations, replacing small meters, we are at or above our goals in all of that. And as we look off into the future with the program year coming up 2021 and beyond, we have some significant projects in trunk lines. So we have a Century trunk line that's down by LAX, and we have our Foothill trunk line that is in construction now, and we'll be finishing up. And we want to make some improvements in our own operations in terms of yards. So we've got what we call a mid-valley yard, which will allow expansion of fuel crews in our mainline and trunk line areas. And then we want to refurbish our western yard on the west side of the city. And then we have some other significant projects. Maybe the headline of that would be our North Haywee Dam reservoir replacement. On the next slide, staying with our water infrastructure.
Are we ahead of you or behind you, Rich? We might have jumped ahead.
You are.
Do you want to see the bar charts?
Excuse me. Yes, the bar chart.
Go ahead and go back.
Is exactly what I want. It should say mainline replacement.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I think one more back.
One more?
Yeah, I think you got that one. Yeah.
Got that one, and the next one I have is mainline replacement.
Yeah. We're with you. Go ahead. Back one.
Okay. A little bit different, looks like, from what the deck that I have. So basically, it's just to show that on our main line, we've been either at or more recently below. And I believe that the 718 is basically would be the anomaly there. And that's really for a number of projects that were already in the queue and we're finishing up in that fiscal year. Maybe some of the more easier lines that we had laid out, and we're able to accomplish more. So long term, we're looking to be more in the 175,000 feet per year or so, and maybe a little bit more if we can contract out. All right, next slide. This is basically the same look, but our trunk lines, again, trunk lines being 20-inch or greater. So you see some peaks and valleys there. Again, that's really more of a function of the size of the projects that we can lay out in a particular year. And so there's no real actual average in there, but as we can develop our projects, and some of them just lay themselves out to be longer than the others. So it's really just a function of the project at hand. But mostly we've been at or over our targets on that. The next slide, we'll turn our attention to our water quality projects. And when we look at that, we're looking at projects really for the direct treatment of our drinking water and or infrastructure that will put us, or keep us, I should say, in compliance with state and federal regulations. So maybe looking at these, the bottom right project there is our North Hollywood West wellfield treatment project. And groundwater remediation is really going to unlock groundwater recharge potential in the future. So the ability for us to put in additional amounts of stormwater and additional amounts of recycled water is really dependent on how fast we can clean up those groundwater basins. So you see that project there noted, and that's significant. But the other projects are really there to note the increases we made in direct treatment. So we've got our Los Angeles Reservoir Ultraviolet Treatment Facility. It'll be the second are the second largest such facility in the United States, right beyond the second greatest, which is at the north end of the reservoir there. So this is in compliance with our surface water treatment rule, and it really is the last project to get us in full compliance with that. And we've had a number of other projects to get us there. The Headworks Reservoir would be one of those, and just to increase capacity and in compliance with the regulations, we have a project such as the River Supply Conduit number 7. So those projects aren't necessarily required to meet compliance, but because of the way we changed our treatment system and how we operate the system, we actually changed how we store and move water around the city. So those are representative of that. If we look off into the future, both in the program year 2021 and beyond, projects we're working on now is continuing that River Supply Conduit Reach number 7, which is a significant tunneling project underneath the city, but also our city trunk line unit number 3. And we have another direct treatment project to remove arsenic from our aqueduct drinking water, and we are going to place a plant for arsenic removal out of our Fairmont Reservoir, which is just north of us. And then again, just to highlight the importance of groundwater remediation, your board approved one project that is actually 2 in 1. It's our North Hollywood Central and Tahunga Central groundwater remediation projects, and those are both multi-$100-million projects. So going on to the next slide, moving our attention now to water supply. So these are projects or programs that are in direct support of the mayor's Green New Deal. And in the upper right there is really the greatest good news stories we have, and just with the ratepayers and consumers in Los Angeles being able to really meet the mayor's challenge for them and reduce their per capita usage. And so you see there, although it's in really small writing, but from the 2013-2014 baseline year, which was the mayor's baseline year, the citizens and ratepayers, consumers of Los Angeles have reduced their water use by 20% in that short a period of time. And we're now, and got down to that year's goal of 107 gallons per capita per day, and we're at now 104. And looking off into the future in 2025, we hope to reduce that to 103, and then in 2035 down to 100 gallons per capita per day.
Rich?
The other, yes.
So it looks like in 2017-18 that it was post-drought, started raining, and people thought, okay, I don't need to take my 3-minute shower anymore, I can take a 5 or 10, and they just loosened all their, whatever they were doing. 2 questions. One is, what lessons can we learn from that to prevent that kind of uptick from happening again? And 2, how did we then reverse that trend? What happened to get people back to, paying attention, if that is what happened here, or if something else occurred? Yeah,
some of that 112 is really how we basically recalculated that base. So we still had a reduction of 20%, but we basically recalculated how we calculated the per capita. So that 112 in reality, coming out of that drought, we really didn't see that big of a bump, although it looks like it. But again, that's just a function of how we recalculated it. And if we, it's a really great question, because if you go back, and so over the past 30 years, I think we've had now 4 different dry year periods. And if you go back to the early 90s, when we came out of that drought, there was quite a big bump back to normal. But after every successive dry year, that bounce has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And this last one, we saw virtually, well, we did see a bounce, but compared to the other ones, virtually no bounce in that. And the reason for that is because, and the lesson learned, is because we've hardened our water use efficiency. So 3 decades of replacing all of the toilets and fixtures in a home, and then moving to the outdoors and re-landscaping has paid off, so that when you go into a dry period, you're no longer as dependent on behavioral water use efficiency practices as you are with just counting on the hardened appliances and landscapes that have been changed out. Okay.
Thank you.
Our water supply portfolio then is, stay on that last slide, please, as a couple other cornerstones. So one is stormwater capture, and that's a picture of our Tonka spreading grounds. This is a project that we did in collaboration with LA County, and we basically deepen and widen those basins there to recharge the San Fernando Valley groundwater basin, and basically allows us to put twice as much water in there as before. So we can put more water in there faster. And stormwater capture is a big component of our water supply portfolio. In the near coming years, we've got our stormwater capture parks programs. So it's 12 parks along the 170 freeway. And we've got, I think, 6 or 7 in the queue now that we're going to be qualifying for Measure W money. And we will be able to basically take water out of the streets and use the parks as a dual purpose, obviously keep it as a park, but also put in there capture basins to be able to recharge water right underneath the park itself. And then the bottom picture there is a picture of the Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant. And starting in this next fiscal year, we will be starting designing construction on basically what amounts to be a mini Operation Next project. Operation Next is where we're going to convert the entire city to 100% recycled water and put it in our groundwater basins and directly in our Los Angeles Aqueduct Filtration Plant. But basically, and that's by converting the Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant. But this is at Tillman, right here in the San Fernando Valley, and we will be treating that water to a very high level of quality and be spreading that in our groundwater basins and recharge the San Fernando groundwater basin. So the last slide is really where we're going to be in terms of water supply, and you've likely seen this pie chart before. On the left side is basically where we've been the last 5 years, and the future is on the right. And so it's the cornerstones or the corners of that are to cut purchased imported water by 50% and manage future growth. So we, between now and 2035, assume the city's going to grow by about 400,000 people and use about another 15,000 acre feet of water, and that 115,000 acre feet will be met by additional water conservation. And then the big slice there that's shown as a combination of that 70% groundwater and 32% recycled water, groundwater recharge, is really is putting a lot of water into the ground, but also taking all that recycled water throughout the city, putting in the groundwater, and putting a big chunk of that actually into our drinking water system. And by doing that, we'll be able to supply about 30 to 40% of the city's need just through recycled water. So again, that'll make it so that really we are drought-free, dry weather-free for probably a half a century.
So something that Rick said very subtly, but just to note, the green slice in the future says new conservation because we didn't want to lose the fact that the increase in population would drive more water use. So in that slide, so the current slide, you look at the 523,000 acre feet, we'd be, what, Rich, over 700,000 acre feet if it wasn't for conservation already that's built in. But we use conservation as part of the water supply in the out years, so it was clearly identified that was there. And so, so that's how we made sure that we didn't lose track of the future conservation efforts.
Right. Basically, we're going to flatten our demand over the next 15 years at about that 520 plus acre feet per year. And that concludes my presentation.
So the bottom line, I think, from both water and power standpoint is that there's a lot of goals we have for the future, a lot of plans where the city's going to go. With the budget reductions that we have, we believe that we can still keep all those things on track at a pace that we think we can actually get the projects done.
Okay, then, thanks, Rich.
You're the MC.
The next group will be Nancy Setley's the External and Regulatory Affairs.
Okay, thanks. Go to the next slide. So this is looking at the energy efficiency programs and what we're projecting we'll be able to spend in FY 2021 and the gigawatt hour savings. If you'll recall, we have a goal to get 15% of our energy sales, in essence, through energy conservation. That was over a 10-year period, and we'll continue on that track post 2020. One of the things that we're working on right now is to basically piggyback onto the state's program for low-income weatherization. That was in part to spend the extra $100 million that was allocated for multifamily low-income programs. We are on track to meet our FY 19-20 goals by the end of the fiscal year, so by July 1, although we were way ahead of schedule, and now we have suspended a number of our energy efficiency programs because of COVID-19, particularly those programs that require someone to go onto premises. Although we've continued a number of our rebate programs, we are able to work with some of our larger customers through the commercial direct install program to allow them to restart some of that LAUSD and Rec and Parks, since their facilities are not currently occupied, so they're able to get some work done while those facilities are closed. And then the one other thing I'd point out is that we have this portfolio of programs that's very cost effective. We may look at adding a number of programs after we get through the kind of stage we're in on COVID, and we may be able to offer up some additional programs as part of a recovery strategy. Next slide, please. Looking at the Environmental Affairs Group, the big activity this year is around some changes that the Air Resources Board is making to the post-2020 greenhouse gas allowance program to reflect some of the changes in state policy since that was first enacted in 2012. So we've been able to benefit really by our emission reductions, being able to, in a sense, convert that into support for other programs that further reduce greenhouse gas emissions, namely renewable energy, energy efficiency, and electric vehicle programs in a way that reduces cost to ratepayers. So we'll continue to work with the Air Resources Board to ensure that we can continue to maximize those programs. The second piece, we have been working for many years with the regulators on addressing some contaminated sites at our facilities. These are long-term projects, and so we now have the contracts in place to be able to carry out work at a number of these sites, and our budget has been cut some to meet the goals we set out. We will still be able to continue work on a number of those sites to keep the cleanup process moving along. And then finally, we are able to offer to both the Water and Power system the service around the environmental review process for capital projects and maintenance activities, and to continue to work with them on both CEQA and permits so that we can continue to move those projects along in FY 2021. Go to the next slide. So this is looking across the programs that Communications and Public Affairs Division runs. I think you've seen a version of this before with some of the accomplishments over the last few years, but I'll say that we've been able to get out a lot of messaging around both what we are doing to respond to COVID-19 within the department, as well as the impact on our customers, both here and in the Owens Valley, and looking at things like reaching out specifically to ethnic media and to local, sort of community level media to ensure that we're getting those messages out. We continue to support the communication to our employees, so Marty's videos and our bulletins. We're working currently on through Community Affairs, which helps get us out into the community at lots of events. Many of those are likely to be virtual events, so we're looking at how we can participate in those and make sure that they're as effective as possible. We'll continue our education programs and our marketing campaigns using a lot of social media, and we found that a number of our communications over social media around issues related to COVID have gotten a lot of attention among our customers and others, and we're able to leverage those to increase our reach to the public. Next slide, please. So turning to customer service, there we go. Turning to the customer service division, they have, to meet the budget cuts for 2021, they've shifted some programs, some expenditures, some contracts to later on, and that will have some impact on, for example, replacement of the customer contact center platform and some of the CRM systems. But there were some things that were sort of higher priority. So that includes our mail center and remittance processing equipment that needs replacement. But really looking forward over the next fiscal year, we anticipate that we will have a lot of contact with our customers around their bills. We continue to see high levels of calls. The customer service centers are closed, except for receiving Dropbox payments. And a lot of this has to be done manually as people start to try to figure out what to do with their bills. But we've been able to streamline some of the processes around the payment plans, extending a number of those types of payment plans so that eases the hardship on a number of our customers. But we expect that there will be need to have a lot of manual and sort of person-to-person contact with our customers to help them work through that. We're trying to make sure folks are aware of our income qualified programs that provide discounts, and you approved the bill assistance fund at the last meeting. And I think Marty mentioned that we are also, for the first time, working to get our customer service representatives to take calls at home and to work on some bill exceptions. So that has already started, and we will continue to work on that over the next period of time. We go to the next slide. So we're definitely seeing an impact on call wait times from the need to socially distance in the call centers. So we're not able to have the full number of customer service representatives in the call centers at any one time to keep the social distancing. And so we'll continue to work on making sure that we can have an adequate level of staffing for the customer call center, but it is having an impact on our call times and our call wait times. We were doing very well really until March, and then as you can see, they are going up. and we continue to see not just people calling because they have questions or concerns about their bill, but really continuing to call for sort of normal business, so start and stops and other things. So we expect that will continue and continue to try to make sure that we can minimize that call wait time. And I think we'd expect that that's going to continue to be at higher levels for at least the next few months. Next slide, please.
So Nancy, one question on that. Is that also because of the closure of the customer service centers? And are we expecting to phase them in back to servicing our customers?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. Yes, we do get a fair amount of traffic at the customer service centers. They've been closed since sort of towards the end of March. We are still accepting cash payments at drop boxes, but a number of our commercial customers pay in person, as well as our in-cash customers. So I expect that some of that is due to the customer service center closures. We are looking at how and when we could reopen those. So we do have staff at them, but they are there to collect the payments that come into the Dropbox. The issue was not so much in the service centers themselves, but a little bit like our elevator lobbies, with people waiting to get in or waiting at the customer service center. So we're going to have to work through that before we can fully reopen them.
In a couple of slides, you'll see a breakdown of how people pay. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Nancy?
Yes.
Do we have a recorded message or something when someone calls alerting them to how long the wait's going to be, and anything personal, like anything that sort of gives them any notice?
Yeah, so we have the kind of the normal those things around it's sort of normal messaging, as well as some on the IVR up front about COVID and delays, and then as well on our website. So. And we continue to try in our messaging to encourage people to use the website as opposed to calling. So we continue to message that you can do a lot of things both through the interactive voice system that you get when you first call the 800 number, or to do things online. So all of our messaging is consistent to try to help us manage that. But people still call and want to talk to a customer service representative. And as I said, they're still doing a lot of sort of normal business, normal starts and stops. We did see one little spike because colleges kicked people out of dorms, or people went home students went home earlier than they normally do. So that we see those sort of periodic fluctuations in the number of customers who are calling.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Is there surge times? Because just anecdotally, I happened during this whole period that we've been at home, got 3 texts from friends saying how quickly and amazed they were that how quickly LADP customer service picked up, and even I called and it was one of the fastest response times. So I'm just wondering if this is tied to outages that are skewing the numbers, or if there's some window of time that's worse than other times to call.
Yeah, well, there's kind of a normal rhythm around the beginning, certainly the beginning of the week. So Mondays are always busier. The beginning of the month is always busier. The beginning of the end of the month, as people are either moving into or moving out of residences. We have had a few outages, and we've seen surges on that. So really, so a lot of that is continuing, and still getting a lot of questions about whether we are disconnecting people or not, which we've said we're not. And so people still call to confirm that. So there definitely are. It definitely goes in waves and cycles, and the longer wait times really, on average, are just a result of not being able to fully deploy all of our customer service representatives.
Yeah. And you'll see in Linda's presentation, as part of the IT work that we're planning on doing, the IVR, which we believe is in there, which we believe is critically important toward serving the customers better and having less, person-to-person interaction required.
Yeah, we still have a significant number of people who, want to actually speak to somebody in person because they don't feel like they can get done what they need to get done by using the automated system on the 800 number. So that IVR replacement will be important to give people more options of things that they can do without actually having to speak to a live operator. Another effort that we've had underway for a number of years is just to try to get people to go to paperless billing, and so as we promote paperless billing, we do see people responding and taking us up on the paperless billing, and so we're trying to focus the outreach around getting people to go to paperless billing. Let's go to the next slide. And so we've seen definitely an increase in the number of people who are going both going paperless or choosing automatic payment and doing both. So those continue to rise together, and that obviously is a benefit for everyone, including us, in terms of being able to serve our customers better and help us on the efficiency of our using our staff. So this is a good development, and we want to get the word out to folks that this is an option, and we continue to push people onto the website. And so as we continue to work on our website and continue to work on upgrading our website, we should see these numbers increase. Go to the next slide, please. So this is Mark was mentioning about how people pay. We see about a fifth of our customers are still using the mail to pay their bill. We consistently get a significant number of people who come and pay in person, and including in cash. You can see that the automatic payment numbers are going up, and then people do take advantage of using the website ladwp.com to pay their bills, and so as you can see, the customer service center year-to-date numbers are down. Obviously, with them closed, people are more reluctant to just drop the cash off, but we still have a number of customers who pay in cash. We go to the next slide, please. And so the customer service division also continues to process consumer rebates, both the various EV rebate programs, as well as the customer rebate program, which is largely around appliances and insulation and things like that. And you can see on the both the used EV rebate that was increased, the amount of the rebate was increased, and so we've seen a very large uptake in the large increase in the uptake of the EV rebate, and our commercial charger rebate. As Reiko mentioned, you increased the funding for that. We continue to see a lot of interest, so we're working through those applications, and as well on our consumer rebate program. The lower number for the EV charger, the residential, was because the program was suspended for a couple of months during FY 19-20 because of lack of money. Go on to the next, and this is looking specifically at the attic insulation. This was part of an effort to reach out, particularly to low-income households, and we've been able to pay rebates for about 2.5 million square feet of installed attic insulation, and also to pay low-income customers or those who are on our Lifeline customers through the attic insulation measure. So that continues to be a place where we were expecting to see growth, but we expect that we're seeing that the pandemic has reduced the number of incoming applications, since I think people aren't doing not so excited about having strangers come to their house to do things in their home.
Nancy, in response to that, we've looked at the kind of the budget on rebates, right, and kind of adjusted what we think is realistic. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we are trying to keep an eye on overall goals, and also looking at ways that we can leverage other existing programs. So that's why the effort, and including with a stakeholder group, to look at more better and more effective ways to reach particularly low income and customers who live in multifamily units. So the idea of working with and leveraging the state's low-income weatherization program that's run out of the state's community services department should make it more effective to reach some of those harder to reach customers.
Thank you.
I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Mr. President, I would recommend before we go into the next section, which is the last group to hear from before Ann gets into the financial wrap-up, that maybe we take a few-minute break for everyone, because we've been about an hour and a half. Does that sound good?
Yeah, so 10 minutes?
Sounds wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Recess. Like school, we get to go to recess.
We are recording?
We're recording. After the budget.
We are recording.
Oh,
Roll
thank you.
call.
We back in, well, do we have to call in session? Joe?
Susan's gonna do roll call.
Oh, okay.
Roll call. Please say present. Levine.
Here.
McLean Hill.
Present.
Neiman Brady.
Present.
Reyes.
Present.
4 are here.
So, Marty, go ahead and keep going.
Okay, I'll turn it back to our MC, Ann, go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. The next area of our presentation is going to be the Chief Administrative Officer's division, so I'll turn it over to Linda Lee. And the first section is the Information Technologies Services.
I know she's there, but Linda, your video's off and you're like,
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
yes.
Yes.
There we go.
Okay, so the next section, I know the commissioner is very interested in what we have. So we did include quite a few slides for you, and we can go in as much detail as you need, or we can leave those off for another presentation. But we'd like to make sure you understand that there's a lot of projects that we have out there lined up, and how we're doing with our other projects. So after all the discussions this morning, my organization has been responsible for a lot of what is going to carry us into the future, and making sure that we're able to meet those initiatives that's power and water and Nancy Sutley have. And so as we've dealt with this COVID-19 event, we've been instrumental in making sure that the department is able to carry on with its mission and do its work. My HR group has been instrumental in working with labor and management to ensure that we have adjustments to the policies and procedures in place so that we can deal with the issues with our staffing. My supply chain has been instrumental in making sure we have all the masks in place, hand sanitizers, every supply you can imagine, cleaning supplies, so that we can meet our needs. They've been very innovative in coming up with new ways to do things, very creative with finding supplies that other people can't even get. Our building folks, they are responsible, of course, for all the cleaning the common areas, making sure that any common surfaces are regularly cleaned so that there's no surface contact. We've been working diligently to adjust the desk space, the workstations, to make sure that when people do come back, they have some physical barrier between them, so that there's not a low wall between them. Office of Emergency Management, we have been working closely with the mayor's office, coordinating all of the messaging as far as through the department and with the city, and of course our ITS is making sure that we are able to have these meetings, and our staff working from home, telecommuting, WebEx, and all those meetings. With that background, so how do we keep this going forward? You know, we have a lot of challenges in the long term and a lot of challenges in the short term. And so we have some big projects that we're going to talk about. But also in the meantime, in the short term, how do we work around the system so that we can continue to meet our needs? I'm going to have to increase hiring. And so we have to develop ways for our HR group to help the systems increase their staffing needs. We're going to have to be more creative in our purchasing department and making sure that we are much more efficient in our contracting, our RFPs, and of course, our ability, as going back to the beginning of the board meeting, our ability to continue to telecommute, but do it in a safe way and ensure that we have protect our cybersecurity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Louis to talk about our technology initiatives, and then I'm going to go back and talk about my other sections of the house. So Louis.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Starting with the slide 61 there, just wanted to touch upon a couple of the items, but certainly if you have questions, I can dive a little bit deeper. The first item on the slide, these are areas of technology investment that we did not complete. Timeline on the ERP project is slipped by 12 months due to the project being placed on hold. But now we are moving forward with the ERP initiative. We've issued the RFQ, and we'll have detailed demonstrations for the short-listed vendors in July with a expected selection for a vendor in August. The network assessment, I'm jumping around a little bit. The network assessment RFP, it was delayed, but now that we have the CyberBench contract, we can move forward on this one. Moving down towards the bottom, the Office 365 initiative was delayed due to a lack of proper network and security infrastructure. Again, with the CyberBench contract, will be used to fortify our network and security infrastructure in the coming fiscal year. Any specific questions about some of these items?
I just, Louis, I don't think this is the time to go into it in light of how long we've been doing this today, but I'd like to be kept up to date semi-regularly on the ERP project. Not quite sure what the best mechanism or timing would be for all of that, but in light of its significance, I'd just like to have a better handle on how it's progressing.
I can tell you that Linda was planning on...
and I need to apologize, Commissioner, the audio was cutting out a little bit.
Oh, I can answer for you, though. We were planning on doing a whole IT update as well for the board in the near future, so we'll be able to take a deeper dive in some of this and also provide regular updates about on the ERP.
That's basically what I'm looking for.
Go ahead, Louis.
Okay, am I able to move on?
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. On my account,
okay.
Yes, yeah.
Major technology investments. I think you guys have seen these slides before. This is from the 1920 fiscal year. And if we move on to the next slide, I'll give an update on the progress of these. For the safety training and tracking system, all of these are one-year projects. The timeline has slipped on the first two by about a month, maybe 2 months. The safety training and tracking, we have made good progress on it. Some of the things that we have been able to accomplish, we now have our own environment set up, security profile set up. We've actually imported data from our on-premise HRMS system. What we plan to accomplish over the next 2 months is the training and developing our complete set of policies and procedures for our users to adopt the system. So we're expecting this system to go live in the July-August timeframe. The Commission Chambers Technology Project, that's a project where we're going to continue to upgrade the technology in the Commission Chambers. Joe Romalo and I are working on that together. The timeline has slipped on that again by probably 2 months. We do have a design in place. Joe and I need to share that design with the senior AGMs and the GM to get buy-off on that, and assuming that buy-off gets done, then we can start the upgrade of the technology, probably in the July timeframe. The last two projects were completed as scheduled in this fiscal year. Next slide, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, these I grouped these projects into the multi-year projects headed by ITS and then the multi-year projects headed by the other divisions. And as has been stated before, in a subsequent meeting, we can go into significant detail on these as the board has requested insight into some of the technology initiatives. But for this slide, I just wanted to give you an overview. The Maximo Asset Management, again, that's a 5-year contract, and we've issued a task order against it, so we're making progress on that. That's still on schedule. The Enterprise Resource Planning Project, I mentioned in a couple of slides ago, It was delayed, but we're now moving forward on that as well. And then the customer information system upgrade, we are making progress on that as well. To date, we've installed the new environment. We've actually done some cutover testing to test how we might cut over. We've developed a number of user scripts. What we're going to be focusing on over the next few months will be user acceptance testing and acquiring a vendor to help us with independent third-party testing. The second part of the chart are initiatives headed up by the other divisions, and I may not be able to answer detailed questions on those, but we certainly can get your responses back quickly. Next slide. These are the lists, and I know that you've seen this before, of the 2021 proposed projects, multi-year and one-year projects. Next slide.
And Louis, just to clarify, all those projects are still budgeted and staffed for, is that correct? Louis?
Sounds like you're.
I'm not muted. Louis, can you hear okay? Did we freeze?
Louis, can you hear?
He seems to be muted.
Or sitting very still. Is he frozen? There he is.
Now he looks like he's gone.
Wait, we lost Louis. I'm waiting for the LL to show up on the screen again.
Or he's a bit of irony when you lose your IT guy to IT.
It's only fitting. Better him than us. At least he can find his way back.
Where are you?
What if they know that they're off the screen? Watch them not be able to. There they are.
Louis, do we have you back?
All right, we're back on.
Okay, there we go. No, Louis,
All right, much better.
Sorry, Louis, I was just clarifying. So all the projects that you've identified in 2021, this list of projects, these are currently still funded and still staffed for. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, yes. And the subsequent slides will talk about the specific budget. They're still preliminary, but I know that it's waiting, I think, for final approval to move forward.
Go ahead, next slide.
So this, I know the commissioners have asked about, I know you can't read it, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but we're starting to develop what we call our project dependency map. There are a number of systems. This is probably 15% of the systems, but I wanted to kind of give an overview, grouping the systems together to show their dependencies. I'll drill down a little bit on each one of these items. When we have a specific IT agenda item, we'll go into this in a lot more detail. Next slide, please. One of the areas from this dependency map of the foundational IT systems, things like improving our network, as we just experienced, sometimes network bandwidth may be a challenge, improving our disaster recovery posture, continuing on with cybersecurity testing and monitoring, IT asset management. Those are some of the things that we consider foundational IT that we need to move forward with. Next slide. This is kind of a chart of these foundational items, and you'll notice at the bottom I have the cost there and the FTEs needed to make these initiatives happen. Next slide are the meter to cash operations. There are a number of systems, but the ones that we're looking to update include the customer care and billing. And when we get these upgrades in place, it'll allow for more functionality. The customer relationship management system, upgrading that, and as was mentioned by Nancy, the interactive voice response unit, the IVR, upgrading that as well. So here's a timeline of the initiatives around the meter to cash projects. The customer care and billing, looking towards the end of this calendar year or the first part of January 2021 to roll that out. The IVR, the RFI has already been issued, so we are moving forward on that. And then the customer relationship management and upgrade there, along with the total cost at the bottom and the number of FTEs to move these initiatives forward. The business enabler projects, these are projects that we believe will help make the overall organization more efficient. Like, for example, I've mentioned Office 365 before, the remote access technologies, mobile solutions for field workers. Next slide, please. Again, the timeline there showing, the mobile solutions, the remote access, improving that to make it more reliable, the safety and training tracking system, and IT training is one of those areas where we want to continue to invest throughout the year. Next slide, please. Enterprise resource planning. Again, I know that you guys are very well aware, replacing our aging budget system, purchasing system, HR system, and we are making progress on this. Next slide. The first item there talks about the progress we are going to see in fiscal year 2021. The cost there, the FTEs required to make that happen. You'll see the budget system right now. FSO is leading that initiative. The three projects at the bottom, they're not technically part of ERP, but they're enterprise systems. Maximo Asset Management, Fleet System, which everyone uses. Fleet supports everyone, as well as the GIS supports everyone. So you can see those projects there, as well as their FTE needs to move those forward. Division projects, these are areas where we have projects that are focused on division-specific needs, and they bring a lot of benefit to those specific divisions. Next slide, please. And this correlates to the 1 year, many of the 1 year projects from a few slides ago. The external and regulatory affairs systems, the EEOS system, water trouble, we're looking at upgrading their work management system, outage management system, the insurance compliance system, and so on and so forth. In total, about $67.1 million, 31 FTEs, distribution automation being the largest chunk of that. Next slide. Getting into some of the IT performance metrics, this is around the cyber awareness training. And I do want to point out the numbers, percent complete in October 2017 and 18 versus 18, 19, and beyond. It looks like we went down, but we changed the way that we tracked and measured. When we were at 100% in October 2017, that did not include employees who were on extended leave. So coming back in 2018 and 2019, I thought it made more sense to include all eligible employees, not just the ones who were working, but also those on extended leave. So aspirationally, our goal will always be 100%, but because there may be someone on workers' comp or disability for some period of time, they may miss the window and we might not capture them all. Next slide. I wanted to reach out and provide some information regarding our service desk. That's usually the IT team that most employees interact with. So I put this chart together. The scale, please note that the scale on the left-hand side starts at 40% and goes up to 90%. But a few years ago, we started tracking this, and I had set a target at 70%. After a few quarters of meeting those goals, I increased the target to 80%, and that's where we are now. I also want to note that the last bar on the right is partial. It includes January and February, but not yet the March data. So I do expect when I get the March data added, that number will fall down. Next slide, please. More performance metrics. This is around storage usage and server usage. You can see that the storage has increased much faster than we anticipated, which required us to adjust our budget. We're seeing, and this was before the COVID-19, folks just using more technology to store their electronic files, which is a good thing. Since the COVID-19, we've seen an even greater increase in the storage needs here because more folks are doing things electronically as opposed to printing things on paper. And the server needs is tracking pretty much to what we expected. We have over 2,500 servers in our data center. Next slide. Again, performance around, this is the back-end system. Some of our teams that most folks don't ever see, our production control job. They're the ones who process a lot of the nightly batch jobs for us to run, for finance, for CSD, and so on and so forth. And again, note that the scale is 99.7% up to 99.9%. So even in January 2018, we were still above 99%. I just adjusted the scale so that it's easier to see. We started off with a target of 99.8. We have increased that target to 99.85.
So, Louis, in summary, Linda, back to Louis. There we go. So, Louis, in summary, we've looked realistically at what we can accomplish this year and the staffing to do it. So, one of the questions that's been asked by the board is, are we going to get to the critical things that we need to do in terms of IT and have the resources to support that, even with the reduced budget? So, you want to give us your honest opinion about that, please? Unless the camera froze. Linda said the audio is cutting in and out. I don't think she realized she froze.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
We can hear you.
Did you hear what I asked? I don't know if you heard what I asked or not. Were you able to hear that?
Hello?
Can you hear us?
He can't hear.
Yeah, he said their audio is cutting in and out.
Yes, let us try to reach them. Hold on.
Louis, can you hear us? Are they relogging? Okay. Just have to sit right here. It'd be a lot easier. They're 150 feet or 15,000 miles of wire away. We have Linda a chance to log back on.
Trying to reach them now. We'll give you an update as soon as we have something.
Marty, how much more do we have?
Just a few slides. We can.
20. Shall we move?
We have another 20 slides.
But they'll be quick because they're not very interesting.
Hi, it's Nicole. I lost audio, so I'm back.
Okay, I see Linda logging back on, so.
I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Page
Yes.
105.
You're there, Linda. Yeah.
Hello? Can you hear us now?
Yes, you're on. Yes. Linda's not a big fan of public speaking, so she'll be quick, I'm sure. So, all right, Linda, go ahead. Start with your facilities.
Just before you go to that, I know that I asked a lot of questions and a lot of them have been incorporated into the presentation thus far. I simply want to say how much I appreciate the level of detail and the clarity especially around not just providing information, but also putting it in a context that lets us know how we're tracking against our goals, and really the way in which all of the managers thus far have highlighted the priorities and how the budget relates to the priorities. This has been
Marty, can you hear us now?
very, very helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, we can hear you, Linda. Yes. Thank you, Commissioner. And that was my goal, is to make sure that it wasn't just a set of numbers, that it was a body of work that you understood as what did it mean, and was it what we're supposed to be working on, and is it enough of everything, and is it going to get us to where we want to be? So hopefully that's provided that clarity. Linda, are you still on? We keep dropping off. There she is. Okay.
I believe she's making her way
She
here.
looked like she's walking out of her office to see us. So,
Ben, she might want, or she might want this.
yeah, she might show up here. So, while we're waiting for Linda, were there any questions on anything in the budget so far? Anything unclear from anybody? Anything? Like I say, the numbers that you've seen in the past and the totals that you see support this body of work, and there's detail in every little piece, which is kind of meaningless except for those of us in Ann's shop. But we want to make sure you understood exactly what the work looks like. So we now have Linda in person.
Thank you, sir.
That was a long walk. Thank you.
Of course, during perfect timing. It cuts out during the IT portion.
Well, we thought it was appropriate. So.
So moving on to the rest of my organization, facility services. They're responsible for keeping our work site clean, the landscaping, our air conditioning in the building, and adjusting our work desk and workstations as we need it. And, I'm out of breath, so forgive me. So because of the budget reduction, these are the cuts that we had made to the what we had planned for next year. They're not completely cuts. What we are is we're going to defer them until the future year because they're not, we determined they were not immediately necessary. So 1230 West 3rd Street, there was a elevator retrofit, some tenant improvements in Fig Plaza. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but there are several improvements in several areas, like the warehouse at Mid-Valley. So they're going to be deferred until the out years, till next year, the following year. Facility services is, how come it went forward? How do I go back, Ben?
There you go.
Okay, there we go.
Drive it.
Sorry about that. Fig Plaza, so this slide shows the capacity of the building and also the current occupancy. So this is going to be really critical as we come out of the telecommuting, that we have this additional office space that we can move people to. We are going to need the spacing at Fig Plaza and at Sepulveda in order to ensure that social distancing requirements that we're putting into our work site. Fig Plaza right now has a capacity for 94 more. And as we build up the ERP program, we're also going to need that spacing requirement. Sepulveda, we're currently working on some retrofit requirements as well as making some additional fixes before we can move additional people in. And then, of course, also we have San Fernando Road and the Pacific Stock Exchange, which the board approved earlier this fiscal year. And we're starting to work making those adjustments to those facilities. We anticipate that we can occupy Pacific Stock Exchange in early 2020. Next slide, the drought tolerant conversion. So we are also responsible for a lot of the landscaping throughout all of DWP's facility. And so this is just a listing of all the drought tolerant conversions we're planning to do for 2021. And this is consistent with what we've done in the prior years as far as the numbers of facilities that we try to address each year. Moving on to my next part of my house is the human resources. They're responsible for hiring, workers' comp issues, health and dental plans, and our labor relations work. And so one of the big initiatives we have for the following years is making sure that we ramp up and making hiring more efficient so that we can meet the needs of the systems. And this first slide right here I have is DWP hires and attrition. As you can see, the number is pretty consistent year in, year out, even though there's a strong belief that there's a lot of extra retirements. I haven't actually really seen that. The attrition is still pretty consistent. The number of new hires, whether it's internal or external, being from the city or outside, pretty much every year is about 3,000. We're anticipating that same amount this year. Right now it's about 2,900 because we've had to slow down some of the hiring during the COVID event. We have in the queue about 250 hires, and so that will bring us up to the totals we've seen in prior years. And again, this is driven a lot by the systems and their needs, and so we anticipate that these numbers will slowly go up next year.
So just interestingly, when we talk about staffing, when you look at about 3,000 hires a year and you look at the number of working days, so we're hiring somewhere around 15 or so people a day on average, every day. Go ahead.
Thank you. I didn't even know that. So here we show a graph of just how many interview and selection packages we approve. So every interview package is handled through the division. Our Human Resources Department goes through those interview packages to ensure that there's consistency in how we're doing our hiring, that we follow the proper rules and protocols set up by personnel and civil service rules. So again, the number of ISPs has been pretty consistent. You see the amount going up year over year. This year, again, a lag because of the COVID-19 event, but we have several in the queue right now that is going to bring this number up to the 1,200 that we saw last year, and next year we anticipate a higher amount. Civil service exam, this is actually one area where we do want to see it continue to go down, and the reason for that is these are civil service exams that we're requesting a list for, and so city personnel has to put out an exam for us and do a hiring call. And so what this is, we want each year to lower down, because as we get more efficient and we get lists where they're continuous, there's always a list available for us, meaning that we have people available for us to hire. We don't need to request an exam and wait for the 6 months or 9 months, however long it takes to establish those lists. So they're always available to us. So I'm hoping to see this number go down even further with time. Personnel action notice. So everything here we do this as a part of the legacy system of our HRMS system, and so everything we do as far as personnel actions require a personnel action notice. And in the 16-17, you see this huge number of 45,000, and that is a legacy of the old system where inefficient way of doing things, trying to figure out better ways to do it so that we can make it faster and improve our processes. So we've hit a lot of the backlogs in the out years, and now currently we have about 35,000. And again, as we go into ERP, these things are going to go away, hopefully. And as we make our processes more efficient, we're going to decrease this by, I'm hoping, a lot more. And finally, health and dental plan enrollees. This is not a number controlled by us. This is really more of a department-wide. So as many numbers of employees we have or retirees we have, this number will be consistent with that. You see the steady increases in the total number of medical enrollees, and that's just a function of the number of increases in active employees, which is what we're trying to get to. So more employees, and so you can see an increase in the enrollments. Retirees, very consistent. So again, our retirement count is not going up. It's staying pretty much the same. My next group, supply chain. So supply chain responsible, of course, for all of our hiring, all of our purchasing and materials and supplies that we need. Here you see a kind of an inverted bell curve, I call it. So in 16-17, we had a really high number of value, and you can see the same thing in the next slide where there's a high number of transactions. But what this indicates is because of our processes. So our processes says that we have a 3-year contract, and so you're going to see these bell curve every 3 years. Through the 5-year approval now process, you're going to see this have a better straight line. So that's what we're trying to get to, is to make it more even year in and year out so that we don't see these big, huge dip and jumps. The other things that you're going to see with this is, so in 16-17, you have 3,500 transactions. This year, we're projecting about 3,200 transactions. We did have challenges this past couple years because of the ERSP system and the eBid system. So right now, Aaron is working along with Lewis to fix that outward-facing eBid system, and we're anticipating have something up by the end of this fiscal year. So next slide on materials, total transactions. Again, same kind of bell curve where we have, it's tied into the number of contracts we let, and so as we go into the 5-year, you're going to see more of a straight line. The last number, the 540,000, is lower than we had actually anticipated. We thought it was going to be more around 560,000, but because there has been a less transaction due to the COVID-19 event, it's a little bit lower than we anticipated. And finally, security service. This is our Office Emergency Management branch of the house. This is our security and also our fencing, cameras, and those requirements. So here in the top line, guard hours, this is exactly what we want because of our success in hiring new additional guards and our success in getting a contract for outside contractors. Our security guard hours have gone tremendously up this year, and it will continue to go up next year. And this is going to help with our overtime issues, but it's also going to ensure that we have high visibility at those infrastructures and facilities that we need to make sure that we have security at. OSI, which is our Office of Special Investigation, they conduct special investigations because there may be some kind of conflict within the division, so they help out where needed. And then I have the Office of Emergency Management, incident responses. So they're responsible for helping coordinate with the city, through this COVID-19 events, fire, earthquakes, major heat and rain events. And so they help coordinate with all the divisions when there's multiple divisions involved or with other departments. And finally, making sure that our staff and employees all stay caught up with training. So different types of trainings like active shooter training. A very successful program that we've had is the personal safety training that we've been doing for the past year. And so we're starting to wrap that up as we've reached out to a lot of our employees with personal safety. And that's all I have on my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Linda.
Thank you for coming down.
So for financial services, one of the things that we wanted to highlight was how much we are in the bond market. So for fiscal year 2021, we're projecting to issue $957 million in bonds, which is $787 million of proposed new money and $170 million of potential refunding. On the water side, we also expect to issue $596 million, which would be $376 million of new money and $220 million of proposed refunding. And issuing these bonds, the utility industry is very capital intensive, so issuing the bonds at a cost-effective rate helps us keep our cents per kilowatt and our dollars per HCF low. And just overall, when you look at how much the department is in the bond market, for fiscal year 2021 combined, it's close to $1,553 million that we'll be asking the board for approval as we identify projects and we approve our capital plans. So we wanted to summarize the financial results. So for the power system, for the proposed final budget based on 20,809 gigawatt hours of sales, we would be looking at a final budget with a revenue requirement of $4,162,000, total operating expenses of $3,698,000, other income expenses including city transfer and debt service of $387 million, for a change in net position for the year of $76 million. Our system average rate would be 20.4 cents, and it's a 7% increase over the prior year. And as far as our financial metrics, we're looking at 2.11 times debt service coverage ratio, 170 days of operating cash on hand, a full obligation of 1.81 times, and a capitalization ratio of 65.6%. Our current metric on debt service coverage, we're considering eliminating that. When we discussed this with the rating agencies, they're really more interested in a full obligation instead of just debt service coverage. So as we come back with the final budget presentation, we may request the board to allow us to drop that one, and we'll continue to look at this as part of the next rate review. On the water side, for the proposed final budget, we would be looking at sales of 195.2 million 100 cubic feet of water, a revenue requirement of $1,429 million, operating expenses including purchase water of $1,070,000, other income and expenses of $180 million, and a change in net position of $179 million, with a system average rate of $7.31 and a 7.7% increase from the prior year. Our operating cash on hand would be at 150 days, which is our target. Our debt service coverage ratio would be at 1.7 times, which is exactly our target, and our capitalization ratio would be 64.4, which is just under our 65% capitalization ratio. So for our next steps, we will be coming back to the board at the next meeting for requesting final approval. You know, this time is different than most, so we will be continuing to monitor our energy sales and our water sales and our accounts receivable to see how that's changed. After May, we will be coming to the board in June to ask for approval for our pass-throughs and our base rate revenue target. And then in September, we'll be coming to the board to ask for our water pass-throughs as well. And then the last two slides is just a summary on a quarterly basis, so you can see that on the power side, most of our rates are quarterly adjusted. Our energy cost adjustment factor, our reliability cost adjustment factor is annual, and then the base rate revenue target is also annual. And then on the water side, we'll be asking for the base rate revenue target for fiscal year 2021. And September, we'll be coming back to the board for the remainder of the 2021 fiscal year pass-through factors. Those are changed every 6 months so we can comply with Proposition 218 and put out the proper notices.
So I did ask Ann to put this last couple pictures together just so you could see the suite of steps that all occur to support this budget throughout the year. When we do talk about rates, we're not talking about a rate increase that goes through a public process. We're talking about executing the factors in the rates that were put in place 4 or 5 years ago. So there's different pass-throughs to represent certain bodies of work. There's a decoupling and that sort of thing. So basically, it's not a public process. It's the board's authority to execute the pass-throughs and the different elements that were put in place in the last rate action. And that is the end of our long and grueling report. I apologize it took so long, but I wanted to make sure you had a full understanding as much as possible of the body of work that we still believe we can accomplish and be very successful at this coming year.
If you guys could hear applause, I believe that you would get it from all of us for an incredible presentation. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the budget office.
I just want to, I associate myself with Cynthia's earlier comments and compliment you along those lines as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just wanted to say the budget office and the system budget coordinators over the last couple of weeks have pulled together a tremendous amount of information and worked together over the weekends and stuff. So thank you very much for all your help.
Well, it's an extraordinary amount and synthesized very impressively. Fred?
I won't go page by page.
Why not?
I agree. There's been a huge amount of work done here. I think it is much more realistic. Although none of us know how water sales and power sales are ultimately going to go, and it's really a guessing game on that front. I think the lower estimates of power and water sales are appropriate and are making the overall impact much more realistic. And I think things like the capital programs have been brought in line with what is more likely to be truly accomplished, reflecting prior increases in earlier years. And so I think this is the start of this year's balancing act, but it's been a very good step. It's distressing to see how the lower sales translate into higher rates, but that really reflects reality. And I think one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to eviscerate capital programs that have taken a long time to build up. And if those drastic measures need to be taken, I think we want to watch the change in load over time as we move forward.
Thank you, Fred. Marty, I'm going to have to drop off at 2:45. I don't know if you're going to need people to vote in the closed session.
I think it's just,
We do have 2 items that do need a vote in closed session, Commissioner.
Okay, well,
is there a way to close this line off and do this
No,
in closed session, or you do it at the second line?
Hold on a second.
Okay.
I was going to suggest that if you want those to vote on those items, both of those items have board letters, so if you'd like to participate in those, and if folks don't have questions on either of those 2 items, we can vote on those now before we go into a closed session at 2:45. But
well, let's not cut off final conversation on the budget, and then let's make that determination. Are there other comments on the budget at this point?
No additional comments, but I have to get off at 3 as well.
So, Marty, is there more on the budget?
So no, unless there's concerns or comments or a change in direction you'd like to see, my anticipation is that you will not see another budget presentation, and we'll submit this as a final budget at the next board meeting, and only just plan to present in response to any questions that there may be.
Good. Joe, why don't we go ahead and do that vote unless there's any objection to it? Hearing none, Susie, you want to call the roll on the 2 closed session items?
yeah, give me one moment to give you the 2 that you have, the 2 settlement items that need the votes, that you have the board letters on. That would be item 21B1 and 21B2.
I move approval. Is there a second?
Reyes, second.
Susie, please call the roll.
Reyes,
Yes.
McLean Hill,
Yes.
Neiman Brady,
Yes.
Mel Levine.
Aye. Yes, aye.
We have 4 ayes.
Okay, we've expedited those 2 items and they're approved.
And there are some items for discussion then, and we will
We'll make that quick.
we'll take those up, and those will be quick. We have it set for 2:45 now, but I believe we can get on the line earlier if people would like to go direct into that from here and get on as quickly as possible.
Is
That
there
would be
any?
my preference.
Yeah, that would be mine as well. Is there any further discussion in the open session or any objection to council giving us his magic words at this point? Okay, Joe, go for it, and then let's immediately go into closed session.
Yeah, we'll just walk to my office and log on there.
Yeah, that you have the call-in information for the closed session that was sent to you from Arlene. So at this point, we will recess into closed session, and in accordance with California Government Code Section 54957.1, we will report any final actions taken therein. Thank you. We are in recess.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. I'll go get on later.